Good evening and welcome to the December 15th, 2015 Planning and Zoning meeting. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, then a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we could please have roll call from left to right.
Anthony Sutton.
John Grant.
Jean Servine.
Edward Mead.
Tom Nickel.
Tom Panzella.
Jim Quish.
I am Ben Gettinger, also present David Solkis and Phyllis Leggett, board clerk. The first item on the agenda is 8-24 approval, Mayor's Capital Improvement Plan for 2016 to 2020. We all had this in our packets. I spoke to the mayor and he's asking us that we adopt it as is, and he wants just to remind us that it's for planning purposes only. It will eventually go to the Board of Aldermen where they'll have to approve it as well.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Would you like to make an announcement about Pond Point in case there are people here who saw the newspaper and think that the board is doing something with Pond Point tonight?
Sure. If anyone's here for Pond Point, it is not on today's agenda. But I guess there is some news to report that the appellate court granted certification of the appeal, so the case is on appeal to the state appellate court, but we will not be discussing it today. Getting back to the capital improvement plan, does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion? Mr. Quish?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the plan.
I'll second.
Having a motion and a second, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Anyone against? The motion passes. The next item on the agenda is new business, 83 Cooper Avenue, Zone R-5.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to recuse myself from this.
Okay.
Hi, for the record, I'm Jeff Yonke. I'm the architect from Quisenberry Arcari Architects in Farmington. I'm here on behalf of the owner of the property at 83 Cooper, Jeffrey Miller, along with our building contractor, A. Secondino and Sons. What we are doing, this house is part of the Department of Housing Superstorm Sandy rehabilitation program. Mr. Miller's house was basically destroyed from the storm. We're building him a new house. The main thing is this is meets the program requirements, which is a 500-year floodplain. So the house will be elevated to just about 15 feet above sea level, as opposed to the 100-year floodplain, which would be 11 feet above sea level. It's in an AE 11 zone. We have taken a considerable amount of time in the design of the house to ensure that we are reducing the footprint of the house. The existing house also encroached on the side yard setbacks. This house meets all of the setback requirements. We have gone through inland wetlands, and I believe as of this morning we have their blessing to move forward with this, and so I'm here tonight to hopefully get your approval so that we can continue in this process and get this house built.
Thank you. Any comments from staff?
Mr. Harris's report, I can read you the whole report or just cut to the chase, and that is that staff finds the request satisfies the criteria of section 5.12 of the zoning regulations and requirements of Connecticut General Statutes 22A 106 and recommends approval in accordance with the submitted plans and comments by engineering, inland wetlands, public works, and the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Mr. Nichols.
Yeah, in this report it said it is recommended that the storm water management maintenance schedule be included as a condition of any approval. You want to comment on that?
I understand that. What we have done is this was in concert with working with inland wetlands. We are proposing to construct a rain garden, which is going to be part of the stormwater management. I don't know fully how the city of Milford monitors these, but we understand that it is something that needs to be constructed during the construction of the house, and then it needs to be maintained during the life of the house.
Any further questions from the board? Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion? Ms. Servine?
Yes, I'll make a motion for approval that incorporates the city engineer's report that Mr. Nichols was speaking of.
I'll second. Having a motion and a second by Mr. Grant, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Anyone against? The motion passes. Although we may want him in the hallway, Mr. Sulkus, could you bring Mr. Quish back in?
Thank you very much.
For the record, Mr. Quish is back on the board. The next item on the agenda is public hearing extended to close by 12/24/15, expires on 2/26/16, 1613 New Haven Avenue, Zone R-12.5.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Just again for the record, Thomas Lynch. My office is located here in Milford at 63 Cherry Street. I represent the applicant in this matter, Seaview Cove LLC, and its managing member, Charlie Gagliardi, who's here with me tonight. And as we recall from the October 20th meeting, the public hearing was held open for the submission of a third-party traffic review, as well as presentation to you tonight of some amendments to the site plan as a result of comments made by board members, especially Gene, relative to the patios and the pavers. So just for a procedural point of reference, I would suggest that we have Mr. Kermit Hewa, who was retained by this board to perform a third-party review of the traffic study that we had submitted on behalf of the applicant, that had been prepared by David Spear, who was also here tonight. And then we can supplement the record with the presentation of the amended plans, and then obviously if there's any public comment on those two items that were left open for public comment, I would suggest we'd move to that. So if that's agreeable to the board, I would suggest that Mr. Hewa make a presentation on his traffic study.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kermit Hua from KWH Enterprise LLC, Meriden, Connecticut. I'm a professional engineer in the state of Connecticut and have 18 years of experience in traffic engineering. I was asked by Mr. Sulkus to take a look at the report prepared by Mr. David Spears, dated January 31st, 2014, for this 1613 New Haven Avenue project. After going through the report, I generally agree with the methodology and the conclusions of the traffic study, other than some minor technical details. So in other words, I agree with the traffic study that there will be limited traffic impact from these 8 units, and the existing New Haven Avenue will provide adequate traffic capacity to accommodate traffic from these 8 units. The two minor disagreement, technical issues with minor disagreement with Mr. Spear. One is about the peak hour factor, he used in the traffic analysis. He used the 0.95 and 0.96. I looked at the traffic count sheets that were attached to the report. If you go by the actual peak hour factor collected in the field, it's more like 0.90. So the effect of that is the actual number used in the analysis, actual traffic volumes used in the analysis will be a little bit higher, not much. In other words, the level of the delay that are generated from the analysis may be a little bit worse than are currently shown in the study. The second disagreement I have is Mr. Spear used the winter traffic volume that was volumes that were collected in January 2014. So that really doesn't represent the worst case scenario for the area as far as traffic is concerned. So my suggestion in cases like this is, go by the highest summer month traffic volumes. In this case, because the road is right on the seashore, we also need to consider some people going to the beach and so forth. So as far as the seasonal adjustment will be a little bit higher than you typically use for seasonal adjustment. Typically, we use 5%, definitely less than 10%. But this case, probably, you're looking at 10%, around that range. But in spite of those concerns, I still feel the traffic capacity of New Haven Avenue is adequate to handle the traffic, existing traffic, and the new traffic from these 8 units. The reason I'm saying that is if you look at the existing two-way volumes on New Haven Avenue, we are peak hour two-way volume. We are looking at 466 to 635, vehicles for two-way traffic. A rule of thumb in traffic engineering is you usually have about 600 vehicles per lane, per direction. In other words, for this two-lane roadway, you are looking at a traffic capacity of about 1,200 vehicles. If you compare that 1,200 versus, 466 and 635, and even you consider the additional adjustment to consider the seasonal factor, we have more than enough spare capacity on the roadway to handle these traffic from these 8 units. And also, Mr. Spear's report showed that, the level of service at the 2 intersections he analyzed are A, B, and C, which is generally considered favorable in a built-up area such as Milford. And I also agree with the method Mr. Spear used in generating the expected trips from this development. He used ITE manual. That's a typical engineering standard approach. And no problem as far as traffic safety is concerned, based on his review of the traffic accident records during the most recent 3 years on the adjacent New Haven Avenue. I agree with that assessment. And also with regard to sideline from the side driveway, Mr. Spear used the DOT criteria for a design speed of 40 miles per hour, which is 10 miles per hour above the posted 30 miles per hour. And I agree this measure, and I went to the field and look at the side distance condition at a future driveway. I agree with Mr. Spear that the sideline conditions looking both directions along New Haven Avenue are adequate sideline conditions. Parking. Currently, 3 spaces are proposed for each of the unit. In addition, we have 1 handicap space and 2 visitor parking spaces. So for these 8 units, we have 27 spaces in total. In other words, 3.38 spaces per unit. That is much higher than the ITE requirement based on ITE parking generation 4th edition, which they recommend 1.38 parking spaces per dwelling unit for residential condominium townhouses. So in other words, you have 3.38 versus the criteria requirement of 1.38. So that's more than adequate. The only comment about parking is it's pretty tight on the site, you know, and all those parking spaces, they are sort of aligned in, they are aligned in single file. So sometimes in the morning when people try to get out, you know, leave for work, maybe you do have some awkward, you know, turning over of parking spaces among the vehicles in a household. So consider that, and consider all the units are located very closely to each other. So you may have some awkward maneuvers given this is a relatively small site, but that is doable. But just, you know, I just want to point that out. That's maybe you know, a little bit unusual for development like this. So in summary, I generally agree with the traffic study and its conclusion, other than some minor details, and I feel the New Haven Avenue will have enough traffic capacity to handle the traffic from this development. That's all I have. With that, any questions from the commission?
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Mr. Nichols.
Yeah, is 10% the norm when you don't know what the traffic volume is? And that's universal?
That's a good question. Actually, I looked at the DOT data for they use for, you know, seasonal adjustment factor. Unfortunately, they don't have a specific seasonal adjustment factor that apply to sort of a tourist-oriented seashore in this part of the state. But they do have some adjustment factor for the southeast corner, in other words, around Stonington area. You know, I compare their factor it's about like 30%. But if you consider the land use in Stonington versus Milford, we probably are not as dramatic, you know, a difference, you know, between the winter months and summer months. So I'm looking at even if you have 20% seasonal difference, I don't think that's going to significantly change the volume picture to push it, you know, even close to the capacity of the roadways.
Any further questions from the board? Seeing none, Attorney Lynch, do you want to continue with your presentation?
Yes, I think David Spears, our traffic engineer, had a couple of comments just to make as a follow-up to Mr. Hua's report.
For the record, my name is David Spear, Principal Engineer with DLS Traffic, and my report was the subject of the peer review. I just want to say that we concur with Mr. Hua's comments and his letter. The only thing I would comment on is the 20%. In his letter, he had 20%, not 10%, for the estimate of additional summer traffic. There's no capacity issue on the area roadways, and if the summer factor were 20 or 30% or even 40 or 50%, it wouldn't change the conclusions and the results of our study. So that's my only comment, is that we're glad to see that he concurs with our traffic study.
Any questions from the board? Seeing none, Attorney Lynch.
Evening. For the record, Ronald Wasmer, professional engineer, land surveyor with an office at 158 Research Drive, Milford, Connecticut. Here this evening to review the minor changes that I made to the site plan since we've last met. I revised the plans based on the comments by this commission in regards to the use of the grass pavers in the visitor parking spaces and as patios. The grass pavers in the parking lot and the visitor parking spaces are now proposed as standard bituminous pavement. The grass pavers in the patio areas were eliminated completely. I've added shrubs for the landscaping in the front of building number 1, azaleas, boxwood type shrubs, and in between buildings 2 and 3. The plans in the interim since we met, the plans were submitted to Mr. Goucher of the Connecticut DEP, Office of Long Island Sound Programs. Mr. Goucher had some questions, and he had a suggestion regarding the storm drainage system, that the galleys be installed in select fill to reduce the percolation rate of the soil adjacent to the galley system. In the process of the review by Mr. Goucher, I had discussions with the current city engineer, Mr. Greg Pedlewski. Mr. Pedlewski and I discussed the soil percolation rate and the galley design system. So I'm just going to point out quickly where we've added the landscaping. There is a detail also about the soil percolation galley system. So we've added shrubs here in the front of building number 1 and shrubs here in between buildings number 2 and 3. On sheet 19, it's relatively trivial but somewhat technical. We've added select fill around the galley systems. The soil there has a very rapid percolation rate, and the DEP recommends that we reduce the speed at which the runoff infiltrates into the groundwater system. I also want to point out on this sheet that we have a detail of a vehicle backing up and leaving the site. This shows that there's adequate room to maneuver the vehicle, and actually since this detail was drawn up, we've widened the backup area by an additional 5 feet. Lastly, I want to review that at the previous hearing we did submit sketches for 9 units. Early in the design process we chose not to pursue the 9-unit plan and design for the 8 units, thus allowing for more open space and to allow for additional visitor parking. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any comments from staff?
Not at the moment.
Any questions from the board? Ms. Servine?
Mr. Wasmer, if I remember correctly, you were concerned about the loss of permeable surface with the change from the permeable patio blocks. Was that your concern in October?
You were concerned about having pervious areas in the parking lot. The galley system is way over designed for what's required. It meets Milford's requirements as well as the DEP's. The DEP's are somewhat less, require somewhat less storage than the city standards do. So the galley system is able to handle the runoff from the entire parking area, whether it was paved or impervious.
So did Mr. Goucher see the plans after you made those changes?
Yes, he has.
Any further questions? Mr. Nichols?
Yeah, you want to go over again the places where you're going to store snow and the responsibility of the owner to remove it from the site?
We have a couple small places on the site to store snow in small storms, and if we have a large storm, the management company will have to remove the snow from the site through loading it in a truck and taking it off the truck, similar as they do in the downtown urban areas.
So that'll be something that's under contract, and they'll do that automatically when you have a certain number of inches?
The maintenance company for landscaping, snow plowing, will have to remove the snow if it becomes a burden to the parking lot.
Any further questions from the board? Seeing none, we will open this up for public comment. Please remember that any comments are limited to tonight's presentation. If you could please approach the podium, clearly state your name and address, and please spell your name for the record. Address all comments to the commission, and please try to be 3 minutes or under. We have a lot of items on the agenda tonight. If anyone is for this application, you could come up to the podium. Seeing none, if anyone is against this application, you may approach the podium. Seeing no one here for public comment, anything from the board before we close the record? Seeing none, we will close the record. Any opinions onto whether or not we should vote tonight? Mr. Veen, you have an opinion?
I think we should vote tonight because we're going to be having 2 new members and losing 2. So we've had this in front of us a long time. So I would suggest we vote on it if we can.
Any comments, or would anyone like to make a motion? It's closed. Mr. Veen, for someone that wants to vote tonight, you're sure not talking.
I'm waiting for comments.
Mr. Chairman, the only comment I'd like to make on this proposal was 2.5 years ago when it was brought to us for a 2-lot subdivision, we went by our regulations, which says that we couldn't subdivide the lot into 2 lots because it would be undersized for both parcels, and that would be going against our regulations. But 2.5 years later, they come back with the same size lot, and they're putting 8 units of affordable housing in. That's where, on one side, our regulations make us do what's right, but then when we don't make the lots from conforming to non-conforming, then the developer can come back with an affordable housing project and put in more units than what was proposed in the beginning. And that's the only thing that really bothers me in the way it goes.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Veen?
Well, I have several concerns. I won't incorporate it right now into a motion. Perhaps the rest of the board might want to comment. But I'm concerned with what Mr. Mead was talking about, and even though we've been told that they reduced this site by 1 unit, to me that's not important. But I still do think it's a very dense application for this site. And my interest would be and my suggestion would be to reduce it by 1 unit, and the unit I would choose to reduce would be the one in Building 3, the unit closest on the inside next to the green space, and to use that space as more permeable surface and also as an enclosed play area for children. By doing that, we would somewhat be decreasing the density, but we would also be helping, to some degree, the very unusual and cramped parking situation. And I think we'd be since there are many 2-bedroom units here, we'd be providing a place for children. And we'd be compensating for the loss of permeable surface due to the change in the patios. So I'm not putting that into a motion right now. I just would like to hear a response from the rest of the board. Can I do that? I'll add that I think we have the traffic report now, and I don't see any issue with the traffic reports. Basically are saying that this is not an issue, and I'm hard put to see the other safety, general welfare, health issues here.
Everyone's very shy tonight. Mr. Veen, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I will, and see what happens. I will make a motion for approval with the following condition, that the one of the units in Building 3, the unit closest to the green space, that's one on the inside, would be removed, and for the purpose of decreasing density, increasing permeable surface that was lost by the patio blocks change, also to provide a play area for children, enclosed play area for children, and I would also add to this that a shade tree be planted in that area. And I think that's my motion.
Thank you. Having a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Having a motion and a second, any discussion on the motion? Mr. Quish?
And, you know, I do appreciate that does mitigate some of the density. I think Mr. Mead's comments salient in that 2 houses on that site would be way better than 7 or 8 units. And, you know, bad development or bad planning is something that we're being forced to accept because of the 830G legislation. And so, again, it's the same comment over and over that our hands are somewhat tied with this. I don't support 7, 8 units, so I can't support the motion, but I do appreciate that it is an attempt to mitigate the density.
Mr. Sutton?
I just to a certain extent want to echo what Mr. Quish said and Mr. Mead said, and express the fact of my own personal frustration with developers being able to use this statute to shoehorn these types of overly dense developments into these types of small spaces where by any sense of reason they don't belong. I want to ask that our legislators, the same legislators that have come here before us and asked us to deny very similar applications, these legislators should do something, should do anything to change this statute, to change this law in a manner that promotes the idea of affordable housing, because I think this board is in favor of it, and I bet you if you asked anybody in this city, they're in favor of it, but it has to be balanced with the idea that we have to protect the character of our city and the character of our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Ms. Servine?
I would just add, and I think this whole board knows that I'm not in favor of this in any other way except that it's an 8-30, and what I'm proposing I think is the best we can get from it.
Any additional comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion? Against the motion? The motion fails. So, Mr. Sulkus, that means the application fails, or do we have to do a
If there's no motion, so now you have a blank floor, so you I mean, if there's no motion to vote on, you're in effect denying it.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is public hearings closed by 1/19/15, expires on 3/24/15. And Attorney Nuff, are you going to do all 3 of these together?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if you could. Actually, there's 5 applications before you, which I'll explain in a moment, but yes, we would ask that they would all be held simultaneously.
And just for the record, that's F, 3, 4, and 5 on the agenda, correct?
For the record, Mr. Chairman, John Nuff, 147 Broad Street here in Milford, on behalf of Lockup Milford LLC. Yes, so it is F3 and F4, which are a total of 5 different applications. So my client, Lockup Milford LLC, is the contract purchaser of the property located at 417 through 421 Bridgeport Avenue. I'm sure you know the property very well. McDonald's abuts our property to the east, and we're directly across the street from the exit 34 I-95 ramps. The address at 417 is located in the CDD 2 zone, and 421, that's the one closer to McDonald's, is located in the CDD 3 zone. The parcels combined comprise 1.33 acres. The current property owner, Mr. Treves, who's with us this evening, purchased this property in 2009 when it still featured the Liberty Rock Motel. Shortly after that, I'm sure to no one's disappointment, Mr. Treves had that building taken down, and the site has been vacant since that time, despite his diligent efforts to lease or sell it to an entity worthy of joining the Milford community. As I noted, there are 5 applications before you. A zone change application for 421 Bridgeport Avenue from CDD 3 to CDD 2. The regulation amendments to make self-storage facilities a permitted use in the CDD 2 zone, subject to special permit approval. As you may know, self-storage facilities are not currently permitted under the Milford zoning regulations. And we also have a special permit application, site plan application, and coastal site plan application. Because of the number of applications and the type of applications, there were a number of notice provisions, and so I will not go through this, but I have handed in for the record a packet consisting of exhibits A through G, demonstrating that we have complied with every applicable notice requirement, whether posting as signs, notifying DEEP, submitting our reg change and our zone change to the city clerk, providing an affidavit to your staff in advance of the public hearing. So all that is in the record and in the packet that I just handed out. The second housekeeping matter is that we have received reports from all applicable city agencies, including police, fire, DEEP, engineering, the tree commission. All have given us a green light. Public Works had no issue. In fact, we made some significant changes as a result of the comments of Public Works and Engineering, as you'll hear in a moment, in terms of the southern end of our property, which butts on Lawman Drive, which is directly across the street from the high school. So our only issue is with the comment from Chris Saley, who has asked us to, instead of widening the road to 10 feet, and right now it's maybe about 8 and in very bad condition, we agreed to put in a sidewalk. We agreed to widen it to 10 feet. He has asked us to widen it to 16 feet. We'll show you where that is in the plan. I mean, frankly, we think that's unnecessary, and it's going to be pushing into the ball field. So all we would ask is that we be able to maintain a dialogue with Mr. Saley to come up with a reasonable alternative to just widening the road to 16 feet. Because obviously, on either side, it's going to go back to its 8-foot width. So those are the housekeeping matters. By the way, we appreciate the fact that you're holding your hearing tonight. I know that this is a meeting that you would typically cancel, given the holidays and because 2 of you are leaving, and I appreciate the years of service that both of you have given, so we appreciate the opportunity to present the applications this evening. All these applications are directed toward locating an extremely attractive, state-of-the-art, lock-up, self-storage facility on this long vacant parcel. You know, this is one of those parcels where, on the one hand, you wonder why it's been vacant for so long. It's directly adjacent to the 95 ramps. You have good visibility from Bridgeport Avenue. There's a fair amount of daily traffic passing by. But while we can't fully explain the real estate marketplace, there are some clues, however, in the current configuration of the property as to why it's been vacant for so long. Well, first is the fact that we're in 2 different zones. There are 5 different zones in close proximity to us, the C2, the C3, R30, R12.5, and R7.5. So we have 3 residential zones. In fact, we have residences abutting our property on the west. And so while there's a fair amount of traffic, even your plan of conservation and development acknowledges that it's not the amount of traffic that you're going to find between exit 39 and the Orange Town line. So it's likely a site that will never be embraced or pursued by a national retailer. So the challenge is in finding use that balances a number of factors. The first factor is one that while serving the city of Milford generally, also particularly serves those within fairly close proximity. And as we noted in our statement of use, our customers would typically come from a radius of 5 miles of our site. The second factor is one that we want to be as respectful, and want to find a land use that's as respectful of the neighbors as possible. And thus our use minimizes or eliminates entirely potential impacts to those neighbors, including noise, odors, lights, litter, and traffic. And last, this is a use that will create an attractive entrance into Devon, whether approaching from the east or from the highway, including complying with the city's design guidelines. As you'll see, the proposed building is quite unusual for self-storage facilities. As compared to others that have sort of a monolithic or prison-like appearance, this will have an expansive area of glass, awnings, a variety of textures and materials, including a brick-like material, very modest signage, and a robust landscaping plan. In fact, I think you would be forgiven if, once this is constructed, someone driving by would mistake this for a first-class office building. It looks that good. So for these reasons, this is the ideal use for this parcel, while respecting the bulk requirements of both the CDD2 zone and the CDD3 zone, which are nearly identical, as well as the stated purpose of this CDD2 zone, which is found in section 3.17. And that is generally to provide goods and services for the surrounding area, as well as a broader market area. Development must balance the neighborhood center use with the corridor functions of Route 1. Development should be based on sound design principles, as well as integration with adjacent residential areas. And that's precisely what we aim to do. So I'm going to have Rob Baltramitis, our professional engineer, show you the existing and proposed conditions. Bob Sudan is going to tell you a little bit about lockup self-storage and their operations. And it is an extremely impressive operation. And then Larry Smith with lockup is also going to describe our proposed building elevations. So with that, I'll give you Rob Baltramitis.
Thank you, Attorney Nuff. For your record, my name is Rob Baltramitis. I'm the engineer for the applicant. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. Before I begin, I will ask the board if the presentation boards are in proper location. I don't know if they should be rotated for the public, being that it is a public hearing, or if this is your normal spot.
The normal spot.
Fair enough. And also, before I begin, I know you have full-size sets in front of you, but what I also like to do is bring reduced copies. Sometimes they're easier for the board to look at. This is not new material. It's actually within your plan set, but they're a little more convenient. Okay, so I'm going to take you through the site plan package in front of you. I'll let you know that the design that I did is based on an existing condition survey that was done by Codispoti and Associates from here in Milford. And Joey's map was a A2 boundary survey, T2 topo survey of the existing parcels, 417 and 421 Bridgeport Avenue. Going to attempt to remove that. And take you through the site. So, what I'm tracing here is the perimeter of the two parcels together, what I'll call the site. It's roughly 1.3 acres in size. It's almost rectangular. It's about 190 feet wide and about 310 feet deep. Along the east side, this would be the McDonald's restaurant, bordering us on the right side of the page, the east side. Of course, to the north is Bridgeport Avenue, that's Route 1. We're located almost directly across from interchange number 34 with I-95. And then on the west side of the site, we're bordered by a commercial property, an automotive repair up in this corner, and then 3 residential parcels here along Concord Avenue. And on the south side of the site, we're bordered by city property. This is what Attorney Nuff was mentioning. It's really like an 8-foot wide paved egress-only driveway from the Jonathan Law Athletic Fields, but it's known as Lawman Road. So the first sheet in the plan set is the site dimensional plan. I like to break up my site plans to avoid a lot of clutter. So the first plan really gives you all the site dimensions. And that's also sufficient for contractors to lay out tied to that boundary. The next sheet is the site development plan that calls out the proposed features. So let me take you through what we're proposing, and I'll start at the top here. There's 2 existing curb cuts to Bridgeport Avenue. We're proposing to remove the curb cut on the west side and maintain the curb cut on the east side. We'll widen that to accommodate ingress and egress traffic. Per city standards, we'll replace the apron with a concrete apron. We're also proposing to install all new sidewalk, or I should say replace the sidewalk within the existing state right-of-way. It was evaluated, it's a very poor condition, and we'll be replacing that. And also, if you could picture the site, there's a sea of pavement, if you will, in the Route 1 right-of-way out in this corner here. And we would remove that in our site frontage and convert that to landscaping, to lawn. And I think that'll really go a long way in a better identifying the access to the site and cleaning up the frontage of the parcel as well. The brown area, of course, is the proposed facility. It is 85,025 gross square feet. That's on 3 levels. The footprint is only 28,775 feet. You'll see the gray area, which is our proposed parking field and access around the building. There is no access to the south and west sides. There are some overhead doors along the east elevation, where I'm pointing to. And in this area here, and you'll hear from Bob just momentarily about the operation, you're going to hear what's different about their self-storage facility, where customers can actually drive in and unload inside and use elevators to get to their units. We're proposing an interconnect driveway with the McDonald's on the side here. And working our way down, as Attorney Nuff had mentioned, as requested by Mr. Saley, the Public Works Director, we are proposing to improve Lawman Road on our rear frontage. Sounds weird to say, but it is rear frontage, where we'll be installing a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk and then widening out that pavement along our property width to 10 feet. Mr. Saley's comment was looking for 16 feet. We think 10 is a little more reasonable. We're willing to discuss this further with him. But what I want to point out is as you go out Lawman Road to Concord Avenue, the available right-of-way width that the city has between residential properties is only 20 feet. So to maintain that 5-foot walkway and a driveway, you couldn't possibly get 16 feet. And that's why we feel that the 10 we're proposing is suitable. It's adequate for the egress traffic, and you also get to separate pedestrians if they're using that area. The plan set, of course, includes a grading utility plan. That's basically the nuts and bolts, the engineering, if you will. A little bit about the stormwater design. We're fully mitigating our stormwater impact with a large row of galleys. There's 160 feet, 3 rows of 24-inch perforated pipe in a stone bed. Provides in excess of 20,000 gallons of storage. So with that, we're able to knock down and reduce our peak flow from the site. There was an engineering report that was submitted with the application. We happen to get stuck between city engineers, between Gary and Greg. So my report was actually reviewed by an outside consultant on behalf of the city, Westcott and Mapes, and that fully they were satisfied with the design in the report as well. This is also a coastal area management as defined by your zoning map. It's basically the center line of Route 1. So this application was directed to Mr. Goucher over at the office, Long Island Sound Programs. He also reviewed the plans in the report, and he was satisfied as well. The plan set, of course, includes an sediment erosion control plan. Very standard. It's a relatively small site, easy site construction, less than a construction season. Calls for your typical anti-tracking apron, perimeter controls, etc. Lastly, I want to talk about the landscape and lighting plan that's in your set. And I use sub-consultants to do both of those services for me. First, I'll talk about the site lighting. I use Apex Lighting out of Middletown, Connecticut. They're design professionals in exterior lighting. This design is based on their photometric study where they look at the site lighting levels measured in foot candles, and it's conforming with your regulations on exterior lighting, section 5.2 of your regulations. The average foot candle across the parking area is 2.3 foot candles. That's relatively low. In fact, it's really designed just for safety and security in the parking and walkway areas. We're able to accomplish that mostly with building lighting that'll shine down into the parking area. We have 2 pole-mounted lights by the entrance driveway to get the full lighting in the pavement areas. There is no lighting proposed along that west side, that residential side, and the lighting that we do have is all downward facing and fully cut off. So there was a photometric study, again, with the foot candle lighting measurements that was submitted with the application. It's compliant with your regulations. Lastly, the landscaping design was done by Sylvia Perdikas. She is a registered landscape architect out of Avon. And what I like about her work, I think she does a great job with taking what's basically a retail or commercial application and making it look better than most, and does so with using obviously native, hardy, but I think most importantly, readily available species. And the plan, while we're taking down 4 or 5 mature trees, we're replacing almost 30 trees and some 80 new shrubs. One thing that I'll point out along the rear side, the requirement of improving Lawman Road down here, that'll necessitate some clearing and grading along this south property line of ours. So we're trying to establish some of that screening again with a row of white pines in this area. We've had conversations with a couple of the neighbors, and I know that Miss Allen here, in lieu of these large evergreens, was looking for some hollies, which are really, they're an evergreen shrub, and we have no problem making that change. And that's a general overview. Of course, I could answer any particular questions you have on the site development plans. But with that, I'll turn it over to Bob Sudan, Jr.
Good evening, and thanks for seeing our application. Just a little, first of all, I'm one of the partners in Lockup. It's a family-based company. It's been in business since 1976. We have developed over 55 facilities over the course of the business. Currently own 34 facilities, composing 2.2 million square feet of...
Excuse me, do you mind just stating your name and spelling it for the record?
Sure, I'd be happy to. My name is Bob Sudan, which is S-O-U-D-A-N. Okay. Again, we are currently in 8 states. We have 2 stores already in the state of Connecticut. And we have 25,000 self-storage units across our portfolio, our domestic portfolio. We also are partnered with a group that has 30 stores in Europe, specifically Scandinavia, 48 stores in Japan, and 7 stores in Chile. So I just wanted to give you a feel for our company. We are partnered with the State of Washington Pension Fund. So although we are a family-based business run primarily by myself and my brother-in-law, we're partners with the State of Washington Pension Fund, which is basically their civil servants, teachers, firefighters, policemen, etc. So those are the primary investors in this development. Now this facility, which these gentlemen alluded to some of the features, it's primarily an indoor access facility. So 98% of the self-storage units are actually accessed from the inside. We have a big unloading area, not really a truck dock per se, because most of our customers are residential-based customers, so they're pulling up in station wagons and SUVs. We do have trucks that use this as well. The facility will be fully carpeted. In other words, the hallways and the units themselves are fully carpeted. We will have video surveillance throughout. Each customer will have an individual access code for when they can come in, and we track who's in the building at any given time by them using those codes. We offer free truck use, so we do not rent trucks out like a Ryder or U-Haul type service, but we do have one truck that belongs to us that we loan out to people to allow them to move their stuff into the facility. So the hallways, again, are all carpeted, brightly lit with motion sensor lighting. So you walk into a hallway, the lights all come on, both in the hallway and in the units adjoining. We have office hours from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, slightly lesser hours on the weekends. We have access hours, in other words, when someone who's already has a unit there, through use of their access code from 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Self-storage is a low-impact use, very low amount of traffic generation, probably one of the lowest of any retail type use or anything really other than a public park. We have a very low infrastructure use. We have 2 bathrooms, a low amount of landscaping, irrigation, although more than we normally do at this one. As Rob alluded to, we have very benign photometrics. We have security lighting, we have our signage, but we are not like a car dealership where we're blasting lights on our product. We're just covering our parking lots and accenting our building in a tasteful way. We have our recycling and garbage stored indoors, so we don't have any outdoor use of that, and so it just keeps the facility clean. We don't generate any noise. The facility is, again, completely locked up by 10 p.m., and anything that's happening at the facility is largely happening indoors. I can answer any more questions that you have now. Other than that, if you're not already tired of hearing from us, I'll introduce Larry Smith, who's our Director of Development, who maybe can speak just briefly about the actual structure and aesthetics of the building itself.
Good evening. My name is Larry Smith. I'm Vice President of Development, and I'd like to start off by describing basically the architecture and the type of construction, but the Wall Street Journal refers to our facility or our company as the Nordstrom's of self-storage. We target very high demographic profile neighborhoods, and as such we try and design and build a much better, higher quality product. We are not merchant builders. We do not build and flip. We're in this for the long term. We build, own, and operate for our own account, and we have a number of facilities that are 30, 35 years old and very well maintained and very highly respected in the communities that we operate within. As you can see from the rendering, the building is of a very high quality design. It has a brick look facade. It's a very energy efficient structure, both in the wall construction and in the roof insulation. As Bob indicated, we have the indoor loading and unloading area, totally out of the climate and out of any inclement weather that might be occurring. An interesting fact, 75% of our customers are female, and they feel very safe and secure in the type of facility that we build and operate. As Bob indicated, our facilities are carpeted. Our competitors are concrete. It's a very warm, comfortable, bright, well-lit facility. We have a commercial office immediately adjacent to the loading area that has glass windows so we can monitor at all times traffic coming in and out of the facility, and also what people are loading or unloading. The product has been very well received by our customers, but more importantly, it's been very well received by the communities that we have built and operate within. So with that, if there's any questions, we'll be more than glad to answer. Thank you.
You know, we don't want to belabor this application. I mean, frankly, we think it's terrific. Obviously, there's a reg change and zone change in front of you. There is requirements by statute that you consider your plan of conservation and development, and your decision must be consistent with the comprehensive plan. I'd be happy to take you through that, but you know, I know there's a lot of folks waiting for the next application. I know that you have other matters on your agenda, so if you have any questions for us, we're happy to answer it. Both Bob and Larry have come in from Chicago. If there's a possibility that you could vote tonight, obviously we would certainly appreciate that opportunity, but you know, we're all here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any comments from staff?
As you're aware, we have several of self-storage facilities in our city at the moment. This will be by far the nicest one we've ever had if it's approved.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Mr. Nichols.
Yeah, I have several questions. You indicated that you're going to have a driveway through McDonald's, or is that just far-fetched?
Yes, our plan depicts a interconnection, which is consistent with the city's regulations between our side and McDonald's.
These are, I mean, your operating hours are 8 to 6 or something. Are these key-coded gates or something that allow you to go in through McDonald's to get in there?
Oh, no. That's only for entrance into the building. The curb.
It's not a driveway.
No, not at all. The driveways are free flow at any time.
Okay. You indicated very warm and secure. Do you have cameras on all the floors where they monitor? Someone's checking these cameras?
Yes, we have cameras on all levels, as well as exterior cameras around the entire perimeter of the facility. They are backed up with a DVR type technology for 45 to 60 days. So anything that happens, we have record of it.
The building has a sprinkler system?
Yes, it does.
One more question for you. The lighting that you propose, is that going to affect anybody, any of the players on Johnny Law's field?
No, not at all.
No.
I hope not.
Any further questions from the board?
I think Mr. Grant does.
Mr. Penzel and then Mr. Grant.
Just one quick question. I count 10 parking spaces. What type of methodology did you use to determine that that was going to be sufficient for?
Sure, I can answer that. Self-storage is a very low traffic impact use. In a lot of municipalities, it's not fully written into zoning codes. So, you know, we walked into towns where they say we need 170 spots or something like that. It's a question we get all the time. What we've done is we have referenced the ITE, Institute for Traffic Engineers, which was referenced in an earlier application this evening, as well as the American Planning Association, and extensive study done by a company called Economic Consulting Associates that did a survey of 158 self-storage facilities. And what we've done is put together, based on the size that we have, the parameters that have been put forth by these various groups, and as well as our own. Again, we've done 55 facilities throughout the country, so we have a pretty good idea of traffic impact as well. Based on the size that we are building here, which is a 63,000 net rentable, which means we don't include our hallways and stuff, so net rentable square footage, the ITE would recommend 11.7 spaces. The APA would recommend 6.7 spaces. Our average here would be 12 spaces. And the ECA, the Economic Consulting, would recommend 3.9 spaces. So again, we have 10 exterior-based spaces. We also have 4 interior spaces, so a total of 14 spaces. So this facility is exceeding all of the parameters of those 3 traffic expert institutions, as well as just barely exceeding our average for the type of facility that we're putting up, which is the multi-story climate-controlled interior access facility.
Thank you.
Mr. Grant.
I have a question, a couple of questions and a concern. My first question is why are you, the CDD2 zone clearly states that we did not want warehouses in that zone. You are requesting to go to change the CDD3 to a 2,
yes,
which does not allow these types of things. What reasoning are you not doing it in reverse, where the CDD2 would be converted to a 3, which would allow you to do this facility?
There's 2 questions, and I'll take them in order. In regard to the prohibition to warehouse uses, I mean, certainly there's a difference between self-storage and warehouses, and I think we all understand what those differences are. Self-storage can be something as attractive as this, where it's being visited by retail customers, whereas a warehouse, which is, and we understood that the CDD2 zone prohibits the warehouses, but I think we know that those are serviced by tractor trailers, by businesses or commercial enterprises, and not by retail customers. So I think there's a clear distinction between self-storage and warehousing and outdoor storage. In regard,
I'm sorry, I'd also add that self-storage is a tenant-landlord relationship, whereas warehousing is more of a Bay-Lease relationship. In other words, a warehouser takes control of the goods and moves it, whereas we are a landlord and our customers are tenants, and at all times those tenants are in charge of their own materials, so it's really not warehousing.
Actually, the regulation states no principal warehouse or storage. So your argument there, to me, doesn't hold water, because you're still talking about storage. So for what reason, again, I'm asking you, for what reason are you not doing it in reverse?
Because the bulk requirements in the CDD2 and the CDD3 are nearly identical, with the exception of floor area ratio. And frankly, we comply with the floor area ratio in CDD2, but not in CDD3, even though the height requirements, all the other requirements are identical. So in terms of interpreting a regulation or a statute, the specific governs the general, and we felt that, and this is after long consultation with David, and we appreciate the generosity of his time and thoughts, that it was better to be in the CDD2 for the floor area ratio reason, and also because that we felt that the ban on warehousing didn't apply to a self-storage facility for the reasons that we just expressed.
Well, as I stated, it also states storage, so warehousing is nothing. The concern I have is basically, if this is approved to convert to CDD2 zone, we have to then basically go with the amendment to our add to our regulations, which will allow for this to be done, which I would kind of consider as spot zoning, but it also allows now for basically anybody in that particular zone to come up and get enough property together and do the same thing, so we would have more storage facilities propping up in the zone, of which we really did not want to. The zones are set up for retail and service, as far as like professional services or something like that, or residential, not really set for, storage.
Well, I think this is really a retail use. We're serving individual private customers. In terms of the issue of the concern that this is a use that's going to proliferate throughout the CDD2 zone, I mean, we do have a limitation as to proximity to a limited access highway. And so you say, well, gee, isn't that spot zoning? Well, no, because as I noted earlier, one of the requirements for a zone change or reg change is compliance with your comprehensive plan. So what is your comprehensive plan? It's not your plan of conservation development. Your comprehensive plan, because you can't change your comprehensive plan, is what is the built environment? What are the existing uses? What are your zoning regulations? What is your zoning map? And first of all, we have one parcel that's split between two zones. So it's consistent with your zoning map because we're merely shifting that zone line about 100 feet to the east. The regulations, the surrounding uses are not in any way being affected by this proposed use. In fact, it's probably the most protective use that you can come up with for the neighbors to our west. So that is the solution to spot zoning is the comprehensive plan test. And so in the same way that you couldn't put a gas station in the middle of a residential zone because you simply look and say, well, all the other uses aren't compatible with a gas station in a residential zone. Well, you can't say that in this case. You have a retail self-storage facility, an extremely attractive one, on a parcel that's been vacant since 2009, before that, the motel, and it's entirely consistent with other uses you find in that area, whether it's auto uses or the fast food next door, or there's retail strip centers down the street. So this is an entirely consistent use with the other uses in the area, which is the primary test of the comprehensive plan.
Not against the project. I think it's a very nice project. Like I said, my biggest concern is basically we are now in making a regulation change. It's not, basically it can be used within that zone if somebody comes up with enough property to do so, which is something we really did not want to see in that particular zone. And that's my only reason. The question I would have is, you could do this project with a smaller building if you were in a CDD3 zone because of the bulk requirements?
As I said, the only distinction is the floor area ratio. And it's sort of an anomaly because the bulk requirements are the same. We're allowed to be 3 stories in both the CDD2 and the CDD3 zone, but for some reason the floor area ratio is different. Frankly, I can't understand why that would be other than just an anomaly in your regulations. I mean, so frankly, that's really what drove it. I mean, so if we did the reverse, then I guess we'd be asking to amend the floor area ratio for self-storage. I mean, I think we have to sort of keep our eye on the intended use, which I think is going to be a tremendous benefit to the area and to this property.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board? Seeing none, we will open this up. Did you have a question, Mr. Reed? Okay. We will open this up for public comment. Please, again, approach the podium. Clearly state your name and spell your name, and try to keep your comments under 3 minutes. If you are for the application, please approach the podium.
Good evening. My name is Holly Allen. I live at 24 Concord Avenue. My last name is A-L-L-E-N. I am butted up right to that property. My property is on the corner of Lawman Road, so I'd be in the back of the building. I have a couple of concerns here. The lighting. My bedrooms are in the back of my house. As it is now, that's an empty field, but the lights of McDonald's reflect in my back of my house. I have tried to talk to them numerous times and gotten nothing. I can hear McDonald's in the middle of the night when they throw their garbage in the garbage cans. I understand because I went down there and I got this paperwork and they said they're open from 6 to 8, but the gentleman over here says 10 o'clock. Is there going to be someone on the premises I mean, if it's 6 to 8, now it's talking 10, but the paperwork says 8. So that's a confusion for me. Next thing were the trees. At first on these beautiful prints, they said they were going to put pine trees back there. That butts up exactly right behind my garage. And so now they're going to change them. I talked to them already. Hollies are green all year round, and people can't cut through them because it has thorns on them. So that would be great for me. But now, I thought there was an easement. There is no easement. Their property butts up right to my back fence. And also the sidewalk on Lawman Road. I don't know if you've ever walked down Lawman Road, let alone drive on it. It is a total disaster. Now you're going to put a little tiny walkway there. Who's going to shovel it? In fact, when we have a lot of snow, our city, unfortunately, doesn't even plow that road. I have to call them 5 and 6 times because all the kids walk down Lawman Road, and it's not plowed. So now they have to walk on Bridgeport Avenue, and a couple of years ago, people got killed there because there's no sidewalks in part of that area. So that's a concern to me. And the noise factor. It may be quiet inside, but they have to get inside. Even though this property that's going to butt up to the back of my house, which literally my house from you, here's my house, there's my fence. I have a little backyard. So if they have floodlights back there, it's going to go right into my whole house. So those are my concerns. And the sidewalk, if you're going to put a sidewalk, and you might as well fix all that road is a complete disaster. They cut down a big giant tree behind my house, was a city tree. They left the stump this tall, and part of it went into Jonathan Law's yard. The city never took it out. It's still there. And in fact, the other part went into the yard they're buying, and it's still there. So there's a lot of concerns on my part with a building right in my backyard. And is the zoning going to change my house? Because I'm right on the corner there. Is the zoning in any way going to change my house taxes? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else for the application? And this is for the application. We'll put.
My name is Peter Gentino. I own 2 lots. There's not 3 lots adjacent to the west side of that property. There's 4.
Sir, are you for or against this? Okay. Just for the record. Okay. Just for the record, if anyone's for the application, and there may not be any, could you please approach the podium? Okay. Seeing none, if you're against the application, you could speak, but please state your name for the record and spell it.
My name is Peter Genetino. Last name is Giannettino. I own 2 lots that are adjacent to the west side of that parcel. My mother actually owned the property. My family, I lived on that property for 40-something years before it was sold. And my concern is the lighting and actually the size of the building. 86,000 square feet is very, very big. That's bigger than any building anywhere near that area. And it's got to take up an enormous footprint to get that size of a building on that piece of property. And I have to agree with Mrs. Allen there that it's right in our backyards. They talked about lighting. They talked about fences. They talked about lockdown. It sounds almost like they're going to build a prison there. And I'm sure that with a building of that magnitude looming over our residential property has to diminish the value of our residential property. And also, I did hear 10 o'clock was the time people will be coming and going. that's, and I heard them say that only small vehicles are gonna come and go. Anybody I've ever seen that moves into a storage facility or moves out of their own house rents a truck, a box truck or something to go in and out. They're, you know, the traffic hasn't been good there for a long time. So, you know, I depend on you people to protect our rights as residents. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you. Anyone else against the application?
Again? My name is James W. Hussey, Hussey, 20 Concord Avenue, Milford. I bought my house on Concord Avenue in 1974. The motel wanted, Liberty Rock Motel wanted to put an in-ground pool. The city told them that they had to put a fence, stockade fence, on 2 properties, my property and the property next door. They did. I have the plans here from the city that shows the stockade fence. 1974, when they put the fence in, I mean the stockade fence in, then Hurricane Sandy came, knocked the fence down. McDonald's bought Liberty Rock. The fence is still knocked down. I went and got the plans to show that it was not my fence, but Liberty Rock's fence. So when McDonald's bought Liberty Rock, they should have put the fence back up when Sandy knocked it down. They didn't. Now the fence only went to 2 properties. The other 2 properties belonged to Liberty Rock. When Liberty Rock was sold, the son took over them 2 properties. Now they don't want to put any fence up from Lawman Road all the way to the Post Road. There'll be no fence. The property next to me is empty. It's a good-sized piece of property. A car can drive right through, right up to the boundary of the storage unit. There ain't going to be any fences or nothing. They can go right through or walk through to the storage units. What I'm after, I'm not against the storage unit going up. What I'm against is that their blueprints don't show any fence. And that's what I want. I mean, would you like people going through your property if there's no fence there? There should be a fence. And Lawman Road, you're talking about a sidewalk. If any of you went down the Lawman Road when they're having a football game, they park on Lawman Road. Half up the road they park. And if you're going to put a sidewalk there, the people driving up are going to have to drive on the sidewalk. So there's a lot of things about, I'm not against them. I mean, the city needs money, needs taxes. I'm not against that. But if you're going to do something, do it right. I mean, 74 years I've been living there. I mean, since 74, I've been living there. So I hope everything works out. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else against the application, you could come to the podium.
Hello, I'm Greg Galick, 409 Bridgeport Avenue. I own AutoWorks of Devon. First, I'm not opposed for this project, but I'm not for it either. The communication that they've provided is zero. Nobody's come to me and said what they're doing until the signs got banged up. I really didn't know too much about this. I would think, being a good neighbor, they would have come over and talked to me, said what the plans were, and that's what a good neighbor does. So that kind of makes me believe that in the future, how are they going to be? The size of this project is overwhelming. It's huge. I don't think I'd be opposed to something on a lower scale, smaller scale. The traffic over there on that corner on Concord Ave and Bridgeport Ave is really bad. There's been a lot of accidents at that corner. This is going to increase the traffic flow. Have there been traffic studies done on how this is going to affect the flow of traffic there already? The parking, I mean, for this size of a structure, there's not enough parking. It's very small. And what's the overflow going to be? Where are they going to go? Is that going to go out onto Bridgeport Avenue? So I think there's things that need to be addressed here. I think it needs to be scaled down. There needs to be more parking. What's the buffer? The buffer, I mean, there's really not much of a buffer between my property and theirs. To have this huge 3-story monster right behind me is going to take down the line of sight, which is part of, you know, I sell used cars and do repairs. They're not going to be able to see me with this huge monstrosity there. I mean, sure, it's going to help in the sense that there's going to be some more traffic flow coming in and out, but this is just, I think, too big. So that's where I stand with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else against the application? Seeing no one else, the applicant could rebut or answer any of the questions.
Sure, and obviously there was some overlap between the comments. And it looks like Bob and I are going to tag team this, but let me take it item by item. In terms of lighting, and by the way, I've had a couple of phone conversations with Holly, very pleasant conversations. We've addressed most of her concerns. One of her concerns was whether there's windows in the back where someone could look onto her property. There are no windows. There are no floodlights on the back of our property that are going to shine into her yard at all. In fact, I would argue that this building is going to provide a nice buffer between her and McDonald's. In terms of the trees, she was very explicit. She did not want white pine. She didn't want an oak. She didn't want an elm. She was very specific that she wanted a male and a female holly for the reasons that she stated. We're happy to do that. We heard a couple of comments regarding the sidewalk on Lawman. It wasn't our decision. This was a request by the Public Works Director. We understand that it's a sidewalk to nowhere. We also understand that sidewalks have to start someplace, and we are happy to put it in at the request of the city. It's your discretion as to whether or not it stays there, but we showed it in our plans because we were asked to do that. In terms of the tree stumps, all that will be cleaned up. The old fence that fell over that we heard from Mr. Ussie, that's going to be removed as well. In terms of the question about height, we fully comply with the height requirements of both CDD2 and CDD3. Their property abuts the property that's already CDD2, and so therefore nothing about the change of zone is going to affect the height or the setback or anything else that we can build in that property. They are concerned about the loading. The loading is as far from the neighbors as it possibly can be. Let me show you. So Holly lives here to the south. Mr. Hussey lives north here, and Mr. Genentino lives here. Our loading is here, and it takes place indoors. It would be virtually impossible for our neighbors to hear anything that's going on our property, as well as the fact that we're landscaping the entire side of that building. And now I know that Mr. Hussey had asked for a fence. You know, I suppose that's fine, but I mean, I think our building plays the functional equivalent of a fence, particularly with all the landscaping that's taking place there. Let me see what else the other comments were.
There's a comment regarding sightlines by Mr. Galick. I'd say, I apologize if we didn't come to you directly, that it's a lot of people, and we did provide all our notices, and I'm happy to talk to you as much as you want, either after this or on the phone. I work in Chicago, but I'm happy to.
Mr. Chair.
Good.
I'm sorry. So as far as the sightlines are concerned, I believe your building, if I'm not mistaken, is much closer to Bridgeport Avenue. So conversely, your building will be blocking our sightlines, not the other way around. And that's fine. That's existing conditions, and we're okay with that.
In terms of other impacts, as we noted earlier, you can't find a more innocuous use other than, as Bob was saying earlier, than maybe a public park. No noise, no litter, no traffic. You cannot find a use that generates less traffic than this one does. And if you look through the CDD2 zone regulations, we could have another fast food establishment there. You could have a bowling alley. You could have a dry cleaner. You could have residential uses with dumpsters in the back. Our dumpster's located inside. There's no food, there's no odor, there's none of those things. There's no smoke. As I said, this is the most innocuous use, as you can imagine. The least amount of impacts of the entire array of permitted uses in either the CDD2 or the CDD3 zone. We comply with all your buffer requirements for adjacent to residential properties. I mean, I think anything beyond that, I'm sort of belaboring the situation, but again, there's going to be absolutely no impacts on neighbors. They all have my card. They know where to reach me. Bob is here. We'd be happy to continue the dialogue, but we really think that out of the entire universe of uses that are permitted under your regulations, this is the one that was most protective of the neighbors and enhances the site to the greatest degree possible.
I have a question, and maybe it's a rhetorical question, but it seems to be a running theme in these applications. So the abutting landowners buy a house on a CDD-2 property. Right. And when they buy the land, the adjacent property is limited to what it could build and what it can't build. Why should their world, and I don't want to be over dramatic, but be turned upside down because all of a sudden we're going to change it to a different zone? I mean, what?
Well, keep in mind, the property that is next to their parcels is remaining CDD2. So, as it stands right now, we could build a building on that half that is exactly identical to what we're proposing. So, and I understand it's a good question. So you're saying, well, isn't there sort of a relationship or a contract between a property owner who buys property and the city in terms of, are the regulations going to be enforced? And I would agree with you. And the answer is they are being enforced. We are complying with the bulk requirements in your regulations.
Well, I guess could you just take that a step further and just explain it? Why aren't we basically saying to them, well, we're going to change the zone and they're going to now be able to build something that they weren't able to build when you originally bought the house? Why is that not the case here?
Because, as I said, out of the list of uses that are allowed in the CDD2 or the CDD3 zone, there is no use that's going to have less impact on them than this use. And I understand that listen, we all get accustomed to the way our lives and our properties are, and oftentimes we don't like change. But I think what the alternative is, then let's leave it vacant, as it has been for 6 years, or maybe we can go back and put a motel that is going to have a lot more impact on the neighbors. Listen, sometimes it takes a while for zoning regulations to catch up to what happens in the marketplace. I think that's what they've seen, throughout the country, is that many towns don't have regulations specific to self-storage facilities. And I think that had we known that this is going to be a use that's going to become more prevalent, and particularly a use that is as attractive as this one, then maybe we would have, adopted regulations that are specific to that. But as I said, in terms of traffic or any other potential impacts, it is impossible for you to come up with a use that's going to have less impact on these neighbors than this one.
What about the other concerns with lighting? What about the fence, and what about?
We have a photometric plan that shows no lighting spilling beyond our property. There are no floodlights on the rear of the property. I'm telling you, we could put, as I said, you could put a bowling alley. You could have a health club that's open 24 hours a day. All those are permitted in the CDD2 zone. I encourage you, read through the list, and I defy you to find one that wouldn't have a greater impact than this, including a residential use, with dumpsters, and with people coming and going all hours of the day and nights, and people starting their cars, and it's, if you had a multi-family residential use, it's going to have a greater impact than on this silent building where all the activity takes place indoors.
And I'll mention, as to the fence, which I think you were about to bring up, I did have the opportunity to meet Mr. Ussie just before the meeting here, and I'm happy to meet with him again. If a fence is something that he is interested across his property line, we'd be happy to talk to him about that. Again, we do feel that the side of our building essentially plays the role of a fence, albeit it's 10-foot setback into our landscape. We'd be happy to talk to him about that.
We've done zone changes that started out with a lot of neighbors opposing it, and then the applicants meeting with them and alleviating their concerns. Is there room for that here? I think we'd be more comfortable if maybe there was more discussion, more dialogue, and more assurances that their concerns would be addressed.
Well, I mean, frankly, Mr. Chairman, if they were issues that we could address, well, we heard a comment regarding traffic. We can't make it any less than it is. We heard a question about impacts from lighting. We can't make it any less than it is. We heard a comment regarding height. Well, we comply with the height. We heard a comment about noise. It couldn't be any quieter. We heard a comment about tree stumps. They're going to be taken out. We heard a comment about the trees. We're changing them. We'd be happy to talk to them. I mean, we'd be happy to talk to them now, but I don't know what it is that we could do that can make it any better than what we're proposing. I think it's just, and they're nice folks, and so I'm not now. But I don't know what else we could change.
Yeah, I think we've addressed all the concerns, other than the fence concern, which we're happy to continue. I would have a hard time wanting to come back for another meeting just because of that, because I do feel confident we could solve that fence issue.
I think it's a natural apprehension when someone wants to build a project that size near your property. I mean, I think maybe they just need it explained a little more, or maybe they have some problems that need to be addressed. It's, you're not building a one-story home here. It's a pretty big project. It's going to affect a lot of neighbors, and if there's room for discussion and compromise, I think this board would certainly like to see that happen.
All right, could you give me 1 minute, Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman, can I have 1 minute to chat with my client?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Listen, if you want to keep the hearing open, we're happy to talk to the neighbors. We'll come back in January. I know that there's going to be a slightly different makeup to the board. You have 8 members tonight. We need a majority of 10. I would ask for the 2 who are coming onto the board, as well as the two who are not here tonight, familiarize themselves with the application so they would be in a position to vote at the next meeting then.
Certainly, and just to continue with the public hearing procedure so we do everything correctly, you could finish commenting on the rebuttal, and then they have a chance to come up one more time and you could rebut the rebuttal. So
all right, well, I think we're done with our rebuttal. I think we've addressed everything probably more than you needed to hear, but if there's any other comment, but I would just say to them, come see us after the meeting and we'll continue the dialogue. Our goal here is not to do something that's going to offend the neighbors. Frankly, we thought it was something that would be protective of them. So, and we're happy to continue the discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Grant?
I have a question for Mr. Salkis. Our documentation here says that the text change would be added as 3.17.2.18, which is actually already used in our regulations. So we would have to, that would have to be changed?
Yeah, that wouldn't be the first time when we're putting in new regulations that the numbers have to be adjusted. The numbers aren't considered a defect when they're presented that way. So it's the actual text that you should focus on. But so when it gets put into the book, it'll the numbers will be sequentially correct.
Okay, so it'd be, instead of 18, it'd be 19. Yeah. Okay. And the second question I have is, since this particular zone has in there the wording against saying that the principal warehouse or storage is not allowed, in the documentation for the new section to be added, is there anything that has to be added into that that basically allows it to be supersede what it says later on in the regulation?
The regulation itself is very specific and sets out a path with standards that would allow the use. So unless you meet the standards that are in the new regulation, the rest of it still stands. So the key, I think, provision in there is, I believe it's within 200 feet of the highway. So as long as you're within 200 feet of the highway, according to the regulations, you'd be okay. If you're not within 200 feet, then you can't build that kind of use anywhere else in the zone. It's still prohibited.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? Well, we'll keep the record open. Mr. Quish.
Yeah, I just want to say that I agree that the project looks good, and I think that the concerns of the noise from McDonald's will be mitigated by the building. And I don't think the photometric plan shows that the site lighting is on the McDonald's side, not on the residential side. So I think that those concerns may not really be, have any impact on people's lives there. So I think it's a good project, and I think it's a good use for the property.
Mr. Mead?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you just clarify the hours of operation? It was brought up by some of the people in the public comment.
Yes, the hours of operation that we're proposing to you are, we have office hours and access hours, which are two separate sets of hours. Office hours are 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday, slightly lesser hours on the weekend. And access hours are 7 days a week, are 6 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Weekends too, because on the paper it's 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. mornings and then 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. evenings.
Okay, that's not how we normally operate our facilities. I'm not sure how that got into our application, but that's not how we operate any of our facilities.
Any further questions or comments from the board? Mr. Mute.
And I too, like Jim Quish said that the lighting from McDonald's will be blocked by the size of the building, and the landscaping that's going to be done on this property, you know, this property, he said, has been vacant almost 7 years, and it's an eyesore of what's there. And the regulations say that on the part that where the building is, you can build up to, you know, a bowling alley or another drive-through restaurant. And I think this building would have the less impact of traffic and noise being developed, and also on the rendition of the outside of the building, you stated in the beginning, it looks like an office building. So, you know, being on Route 1, it would, I think, would fit with no problem.
Mr. Sutton.
Is it possible that we can close the hearing and vote tonight?
Yeah, I'm just one of 10 members. Sometimes I think I'm a dictator, but I'm just one of 10 members.
You're benevolent. Thank you.
Mr. Penzella.
I agree with everyone here, with Ed and with Jim, and I think it's a good project, and I think it's going to be one to be good for the neighbors. And I don't see any problem voting on it tonight.
You know, my only concern is, and I like the project as well, but how do you get around Mr. Grant's comment? We addressed that it's not a warehouse, but how is it not a storage facility?
Because, I mean, this is going to sound silly, because it's a self-storage facility. They're two different things. You know, it's typical legislative interpretation. The specific governs the general. You have a self-storage facility. We all know what that is, as opposed to a storage which is, you know, which is run by a commercial enterprise and utilized by a commercial enterprise. I mean, you have the ability under the statutes to make a further modification or tweak to the proposed regulation to somehow further refine this. But, you know, I mean, I looked at it, David's looked at it, and I think we're all satisfied that we all know what the difference is.
Yeah, I'd mention we do this a lot around the country, and I mean, a lot of towns have more zoning about blacksmiths than they do about self-storage, simply because self-storage is a new industry, especially this multi-story sort of latest generation version of self-storage. Really didn't come around until the mid-90s. Self-storage came in the mid-70s, but this product that we're bringing here really didn't come around to the mid-90s. So it really doesn't fit the model of warehousing or warehousing and storage as a phrase. It is sort of its own endeavor. In a lot of towns that we've gone into, we've gotten text amendments where we talk about it's not storage, it is an interior access climate controlled self-storage facility is a different type of use.
Mr. Mead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you rent out the units, can you limit so it's only for residential people and not to commercial use? Or do you have that in your lease?
We rent to small businesses as well as residential, so we would rent to, say, sales reps, a dentist's office storing their corporate records, you know, small businesses like that, we also rent to. So we do both, but a facility like this would probably be about 75% residential base and 25% small business.
I mean, you wouldn't rent to somebody that's like, say, that services vending machines where they would store their product there and come out every day to...
No, we don't allow people to store food. If they had a bunch of, say, vending machines, old vending machines that they needed stored, they could store those, but they couldn't store food. Nor could they work on the vending machines in our facilities because we don't allow people to do work in our facility. They just can load and unload their units.
Mr. Sutton.
Mr. Sudan, perhaps for the record, it would be good if you would sort of expand on that about the types of uses that are not allowed in your facility as far as commercial type uses and what you'd be preventing and what would be allowed in the facility.
Well, again, we have a tenant-landlord relationship with our customers. So and we have a lease with them that is specific as to what is allowed to be stored and what is not allowed to be stored. And what is not allowed to be stored are chemicals, volatile chemicals, flammables, firearms, any illegal substances, etc., or food, because we don't need food stored there. So, you know, as far as access, we also have and this makes us different than most other self-storage facilities. We have a master key locking system. So in other words, if you rent a unit from us, you don't bring your own padlock. We provide you with a lock that's integrated into the door, and we have a master key to all the units. A lot like a apartment landlord will have a key to all of the units in his apartment building. Not that he goes in there, but we do have access. So if we need to do something as simple as change a light bulb, or we smell something that's not quite right, or there's just something that seems wrong, the police have an issue or something like that, there's a way to access those units. Additionally, everything that is loaded into the building through the loading docks is all on camera. We actually have a whole row of windows between our loading area and our office. And that generally we do that to make our customers feel more comfortable in loading and unloading, that they're not in a spot that's close. Because as Larry alluded to, the majority of the decisions to use self-storage, those customers are women. So we try to cater and make our facilities nicer to cater to women. And I don't know if I've fully answered your question. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Nichols.
You have various unit sizes?
Yes, that's right. Anywhere from a 25 square foot unit, which would be a 5 foot by 5 foot, up until a 10 foot by 30 unit, which would be 300 square feet. The average size of our unit is about 95 square feet.
And how would you determine what was being stored in there? You were pretty concise about saying no food, no hazardous stuff, no weapons, no ammunition. How would you know what was in there?
We won't know everything that's going on. Again, we have provisions in our lease that prohibit certain uses. It's in accordance with state self-storage laws. We are a tenant-landlord relationship. So just like the apartment landlord doesn't know everything that's happening in the apartment buildings other than the rules he sets on there, we don't know everything because we don't have care, custody, and control of the items. That being said, we believe our facility goes the extra mile compared to other self-storage facilities in the way we have basically a very monitored access. If there's any bad guys looking to use self-storage, they usually go to a less expensive and less monitored facility. But I can tell you, not only do we develop these facilities, we own and run them and manage them ourselves, and we have almost no problems.
Any more comments, questions, motions? Mr. V.
I just have one comment that's not really relevant to our land use decision right now, but you do know that we just approved a storage facility about half a mile down the road from you, right?
Sure. Yes, I drove by it this afternoon.
If you could just come to the microphone, and technically you guys do have a chance to comment on the rebuttal.
Okay, everybody talked about the size and all this sort of stuff, but nobody actually said how many storage units there's actually going to be.
Oh, that's easy.
Right now we are, right now we are at 669 storage units, which is our average facility nationwide is about 750, so this is a little bit smaller than our typical self-storage facility.
That means that there's 600 potential customers. When we ran the motel, we had 12 functioning units, we were required to have way more than 10 parking spaces, which they are saying they are proposing, which means that it just shows you the size of that building. And 600 customers is a lot more than 12. And I'm sure hoping that big money is not going to overrule the little guy in this situation.
Well, we've got...
Just so you know, the procedure is they now have a chance to comment on your rebuttal, and then because you're the applicant, you have the final chance to rebut the rebuttal's rebuttal.
I don't like some of the things, but I understand that everybody has to make money. I think the building is beautiful, and we will be facing the back of the building. So I really don't have a problem of the building. It's noise factors and lights to me. He already promised that he wouldn't put oak trees that shed or any kind of evergreen that grows 70 feet tall. He already promised me that. My concern is really now the sidewalk, because Jonathan, the Jonathan Law in the back there, all the kids walk down that disastrous road. And it is a disastrous road. They're going to make these people put a stupid little sidewalk up. What about the rest of the road? What's the matter with Milford? I'm very proud of Milford. I've lived here a long time. But these kids also deserve not a half a sidewalk. Fix the road. I live right in the back there. My lights are, it's concerning my lights, but I don't have a problem of the building. It's a beautiful building.
Well, I appreciate Holly's comments regarding the building, and I think we've demonstrated as best we can in terms of traffic impacts and parking needs. So if you have any questions for us, but I mean, ultimately it's your decision whether or not to close the hearing and whether or not to vote. Obviously, we'd love to have you vote for it tonight, but that's your call.
Well, in reading the tea leaves, I think the board wants to vote tonight, so if someone wants to make a motion, the floor is yours. Mr. Quish.
Do I need one motion, or do I need 4 motions?
We need to close the public hearing before we can make a motion. So does anyone see any reason why we need to keep the public hearing open? All right, the public hearing is closed.
No. Just close the hearing.
Yeah, I mean, the procedure is you're part of the rebuttal, so you could talk.
Before. All of you, all of the audience, the gentleman over here says he's got a list what you can and cannot put in the storage units. You all watch TV. The boxes come in, Bibles. And what are they? Guns. They don't know what's going in those storage units. They might see cameras, people unloading stuff, but they don't know what's going in there. So take in consideration, could be anything. Nowadays, it could be anything. Thank you.
I had one other concern I thought of while I was sitting. Has there been environmental studies done of the construction, what the impacts were? Okay. Because that is all rock and shale on that property. And when they took down the motel, they did a lot of blasting there just to level it. So I'm assuming that to put in foundations, there's going to have to be more blasting to put the footings in? What's not necessarily?
Sir, you need to address your comments to us, and then they'll be able to.
Okay. So my concern is what the impact is with the construction of that size of a project. Just to level the property to get it fairly flat, they blasted for probably a month just to level it. So to put in a foundation for that size of a building, are they going to have to blast? What's the impact to the property owners? My property, the buildings, are we going to have cracked foundations? That's a concern that hasn't been addressed. So I'd like to know about that.
Sure. Our professional engineer, Rob Baltramitis, is going to discuss that. We've done borings, and he can be very specific regarding that response.
Yeah, good evening. For your record again, Rob Baltramitis. We did a boring program based on the building location, and we do not, first of all, this will be a shallow foundation system, basically frost, 42 inches, and we do not anticipate blasting in the building envelope. As you get closer, in fact, the average depth to rock in the building area is about 8 feet. As you get closer to Route 1, the rock does pick up. So there is a chance we may need to hole ram for utility connections, but I wouldn't anticipate a large blasting program, at all. And if we do need to blast, it'll be under the supervision, under a permit from the fire marshal's office, which is typical, and it would include pre-blast surveys of neighboring properties, but do not anticipate it for the building construction.
Thank you.
Then the only other thing is, as Bob has said, if you rent out an apartment, you don't know what's happening there either. I mean, they take as many precautions as they reasonably can to make sure that they are safe for all their other customers, as well as safe for the neighbors.
Thank you. We will close the public hearing. Would anyone like to make a motion? Mr. Quish.
Again, the question is it one motion or 4 motions? Can we make one motion to cover every application?
I would defer to Mr. Sulkin.
You can do that. The items that you would be approving or making a motion for, if it's for approval, would be for a CAM, a site plan, a special permit, a zone change, and a regulation change. So you can vote on them separately, you can vote on them together, as long as the motion is specific, so we know that each one of those items has been voted on.
Yes, so as Mr. Solskis read them off, I would include those in my motion to approve.
Having a motion, do we have a second? Mr. Pinzella. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Veen.
I would just, I think there are a couple unresolved issues that I'm satisfied with leaving in the hands of the planning office, but I think one is the fence, negotiating with the neighbors whether the fence and whether it's appropriate here. Also, this unusual issue with the sidewalk. There's Public Works, the neighbors, and you people to decide that, but I'm happy to leave that in the hands of you and Mr. Salkus as well.
You can require the fence as a condition of approval. You can do that. The sidewalk issue, we heard from the neighborhood. Really, the neighborhood doesn't want it. The applicant only put it in there because the Public Works Director was requiring it. If you'd like, as part of the approval, a statement from the board saying, you don't think it's appropriate, that can be obviously, used in their negotiations with Public Works.
Didn't we have an issue one time a few years ago on sidewalks where the Public Works has the final say? Even though we told them that we wanted them in, he came back and told us it was their choice and not ours.
So now the question is, the ordinance talks about sidewalks that are in the public right-of-way and a public street. The question is Lawman a publicly accepted street? I don't think it is. It's on school property. I don't think it's a city street. I could be wrong, but that would be the twist that could be part of the negotiation, later on between the applicant and Public Works.
We have a motion and we have a second. Mr. Veen, are you making an amendment to the motion?
I guess I would make the amendment that this still, I'm always in favor of sidewalks except for this situation, which I think is unusual, and I would be satisfied if that could be worked out between Public Works and neighbors and the office. And also the issue is a fence also. I'm not ready to say add a fence, but I think that needs to be negotiated with the other neighbors. So can we leave it at that?
Having a motion in a second, any discussion on the motion? I would just simply say that I'm against the motion for the two reasons I stated before. One is I think a self-storage falls under the definition of storage, and I think there should be more community involvement before we make zone changes. I mean, it's not a small task to change a zone. I don't think we should just, have 1 2-hour session hearing and then change a zone. But those are my two comments. Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Anyone against? The motion passes. Thank you. We're going to take a 4-minute break so people that want to leave could file out, and then we will get to the last substantive item on the agenda. We are back on the record. If everyone could take a seat and please quiet down. We are back on the record. Just a bit of housekeeping. On the last regulation that we changed, the effective date is January 8th, 2016.
Yeah, just to make it clear for the record, it was the last application that you heard that included the regulation change, so the effective date would be
January 8th, 2016. Yes. Which brings us to the next item on the agenda, 553 West Avenue, Zone DO-25.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Brian Stone. I'm an attorney with the Pellegrino Law Firm in New Haven, and I represent the applicant, Grillo Services, LLC. With me tonight is L.J. Grillo and Mike Grillo, who are the principals of Grillo Services, and also consultants who make presentations before you and are here to answer questions. Those are Fred Mesha, who's a senior project engineer from Ty & Bond, Craig Yanis, also of Ty & Bond, who's a professional traffic operations engineer and a professional engineer, Matthew Davison, a Connecticut certified forester, professional soil scientist, professional wetland scientist, and a certified professor in erosion and sedimentation control. Aris Stalis, who's a professional landscape architect, and Carl Cassio of Acoustical Technologies, Inc., who's a doctor of acoustics. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to present en masse, rather than as they come up, their curriculum vitae. The property which is the subject of this application at 553 West Avenue is the 57.36 acre parcel of land. It's kind of a unique piece for a number of reasons. It was actually former watershed land of the Regional Water Authority. It's what's known as Class 3 land, which is land that the authority has designated as not being part of a watershed for future water supply use, so they view it as surplus land, and they have a goal actually of selling that land and using the proceeds to purchase more Class 1 and Class 2 land. I know that only because I was on the board, so I'm kind of familiar with it. The property was actually sold in 2001 to the Kingdom Life Church. who still owns the property. They at one time had a plan to locate their church facility that went by the wayside. And Grillo Services contracted to purchase the piece, subject to zoning approval, to open an operation there, which is a subset of their present operation on Oronoke Road, where they've been in operation for, I believe, 23 years. This is not a replacement for that operation. It is an addition to it, and they will continue and look to operate both facilities. The property is unique because over 41 acres of the property is subject to a conservation easement in favor of the city of Milford, which was created at the time that the Regional Water Authority transferred the property. It's also subject to the walkway easement for the walking trail, which, as I'm sure you're all aware, was destroyed by a fire a number of years ago. Presently, in fact, the city is in receipt of a grant of $500,000 and has, in our proceeding and hopefully fast-tracking, the reconstruction of that walking trail, and are in fact working with the Grillos to help accomplish that. In addition to the trail, one of the things in your package, one of the comments from your departments is from the Conservation Commission suggested that there be a plan for maintenance to try to control the Phragmites on the site. Phragmites have overrun the site, probably were a significant cause of the fire. And we walked the site with the Conservation Commission and Mr. Johnson, who we discussed this with. He had recommended there's a deep contractor who had a proposal through DEEP to treat and control the Phragmites. You'll hear a little bit more about that. Our clients are agreeable to undertaking that task and, in fact, have signed an agreement which was presented to Mr. Johnson, and I think it's fair to say that he's very happy about that. I'd like to present you with a copy of that agreement and of acknowledgement that they will take care of that. The proposed use for this property is the recycling of leaf and grass clippings for production and sale, compost, wood, and mulch processing and sale, topsoil screening and processing and sale of specialty soils, and the appurtenant sale of gravel and stone products and pavers. The property is zoned DO 25, and under Section 3.6 of your regulations, this use is not a permitted use. In fact, it's not a permitted use anywhere in the zone, and that's anywhere in town. In fact, you would likely find that it's not the type of use you would find in any zoning regulations as being an allowed use, because it's rather unique, different, and relatively new type of operation. It is also not a prohibited use anywhere in town. And so we believe that the appropriate course to present this application was to bring an application for a special exception which is allowed under your regulations where there is a use which is not necessarily permitted in a zone but not prohibited in a zone. We believe that, and we will present to you tonight, all of the requirements under Section 7.3 of the regulations to establish that this is an appropriate use. And I believe that we will establish that it is not only an appropriate use, but it is an ideal use for this particular piece of property, for the neighborhood, and for the municipality. With that in mind, I'd like to start calling upon our experts to present the details of the plan, and I will start with Mr. Fred Masher, our project engineer.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Fred Masha. I'm a senior project engineer with Ty & Bond. We have offices in Shelton, Connecticut. I've been doing this type of work for over 35 years. I'll be discussing the plans that we had prepared in support of this application. This drawing that you see up here on the easel right now is basically an enlargement of Milford's zoning map. The parcel right in the center here is the 57-acre parcel that Attorney Stone had mentioned. And Attorney Stone also mentioned out of the 57 acres, 41 acres is protected by easements that the water company applied to the property when they sold it to the church. This drawing here is drawing C 2.0, which is in your package. And basically what this drawing shows is everything south of this green line is preservation land. The only thing that can be done on that land is the boardwalk that was there and is going to get rebuilt. Adjacent to that land, underneath this orange line on both sides, is what was called natural resource development and conservation use. Basically, that land can be used for access to the property, and very limited what it can be used for. Maintain trails, provide learning centers, and everything else. What the water company did was, out of the 57 acres, they deemed 15 acres that could be developed. The 15 acres that can be developed is basically above this green and orange line, parallel to I-95. Now, those areas are just based on what the water company had deemed. If you take a closer look at it, this here is the same sheet 2.0. Now, in that 15 acres that the water company deemed could be developed, there's quite a few restrictions to it. The orange line running right through the center is an easement to Iroquois gas line. Then they put the gas line in back in the 90s. So that bisects the property in half. The area that you see shaded in blue is under your floodplain. The two areas that you see shaded in yellow are part of the development area, but because they are either cut off by the floodplain, or in this case, this small triangle shape on Schoolhouse Road is separated from the hotel. They're part of the development area, but they're really not practical to develop. So once you take all these areas, the 15 acres that was deemed developable, there's roughly less than 8 acres that can be developed. The rest of the project will leave the land in its state that it is now. So we've developed a plan to work with the area that we can work with, which is the 8 acres. Other impacts to the property, by no fault of the church that owns it now, the water company that owned it before, is impact from the state of Connecticut. drainage from I-95 drains into this property in 4 locations. And if you take a walk out there, if you come into the property from Schoolhouse Road, you can see the evidence of the stormwater that has impacted the property and everything that runs off I-95. There's a couple of areas with debris and sand and siltation from the highway over the years has impacted the property. Part of our application and part of the application we had submitted to the Inland Wetlands Commission was to clean those areas up. As far as the proposed project, again, all the sheets I'm referring to are sheets that are in your package. The proposed development is on sheet 3.0. And what we're proposing on the site is a small 2-story office building, a little over 3,000 square feet, a small storage building, dry storage, roughly, again, 3,000 square feet, parking area for customers and employees, area for patio block displays and material storage, material storage bins, a truck scale, diesel tanks for refueling the equipment that operates on the site, as well as some trucks. The site will be serviced with public utilities. There will be wetland and floodplain mitigation areas. There will be areas for windrow and the leaves that come in and composting. There will be area for brush, logs, and stumps to be brought in, stockpiled in anticipation to be ground up to make mulch. There will be area for topsoil coming in to be screened and processed. Just to walk you through the site plan, the access to the site will be off West Avenue, located in this area here. Come into the driveway, and there'll be the office building and the dry storage building and the employee and customer parking in that area there. To the south of the office building is area for the bins to store materials. Now, if any of you have ever been down to the Gorilla's operation on Ornard Road, once the material has been processed, it's stored in open concrete cells. The cells are built out of concrete blocks, and they're stacked so that material could be dumped in there. When you come in with a small truck or dump truck to pick up material, they load from those areas, and that's all going to be stored in here. These parallel lines here are to show where, when the leaves come in and they're dumped in piles for composting, they're stored in windrows. And the Gorillas will talk a little bit more about that process when they present. Across the gas pipeline is the area that we have designated for the raw product to come in and to be stored prior to it being processed into mulch. They basically take leaf products, tree stumps, cut up trees, brush, and grind it and make mulch. And their end product is mulch that comes out of all these materials. And all that operation will go on and over in this area here. As with any small office building, they need to be serviced by public utilities. There'll be electric service to the building, water service, sanitary sewer service, and telecommunications. Now, the gas line that runs through the property, like I said, was built in the 90s. It's not okay. The gas line that was installed in the 90s is a 24-inch main, and that gas line basically runs from Long Island up through New York State to Niagara Falls. This project will not impact that. The gas line is an easement through there, and our development is on either side of that. The only, we have driveways crossing that, but we've discussed that with Iroquois, and as long as it's a crossing and not a impact, Iroquois did not want any materials to be excavated, stockpiled, and moved on top of the pipeline as a permanent condition. The facility's operating hours will be Monday through Friday, 7 to 4:30, very similar to what they're doing at Ornock Road, Saturdays from 7 to 3. The peak period of operations of this complex, once it's constructed, would be between March and June, and then between September and November. Basically, between March and June is when yards are being cleaned up, material comes in, mulch goes out, and then September through November is when leaves and tree trimmings materials come back in. So that's when the peak periods of operation. Vehicle access to the site will be from West Avenue. When the facility is closed, will be a gate, and there'll be no access to it. Very similar to what they have on Ornock Road. There is emergency access drive off of Schoolhouse Road that'll be blocked off by bollards, and that's basically emergency access to the site because it is such a large site, and we do have frontage on Schoolhouse Road. We provided an emergency access drive there. So once the project is built, their operation is they bring leaves in to the site through commercial, private, and municipal haulers. Materials will be inspected prior to being dumped on the site, and if there's anything in the load that they feel is not acceptable, they do reject truckloads of material, and they do not let it come into the site. Or if a truck is dumped and material was snuck into there, and generally the material that gets mixed in with it is building demolition, and they have the haulers come back and take it away. So they inspect that, and then they have the material either dumped in the windrows or in the designated stockpile areas. The base that all these materials are on is a 12 to 15-inch gravel base. So their entire operation is more or less a pervious pavement. The materials, well, the windrow materials, the leaves, are generally in a pile in a 6 to 9 month period where they're turned over and eventually reduced in volume. Tree stumps, brush, branches are brought in, stockpiled in an appropriate area, which we show on this side of the gas line. When they have enough material to compost, they will put that through a grinder, and they actually grind it down and mix it in with other materials, the leaf compost, and they make their mulch. In the engineering report that was submitted with your application, we have a complete operation and maintenance plan. Stormwater and detention and infiltration basins are included in the project, and like I mentioned earlier, because of what's happening with the DOT, over in this corner on Schoolhouse Road, we have a detention basin to basically collect the materials that run off from the highway. Over in this area here, if you go out there today, there's an existing pond that's probably the color of that green bag behind you on the stage. It is so contaminated with runoff from the highway that it needs to be cleaned out. When we were working with the Wetlands Commission, they agreed, as part of the application, was to have that material removed and restore the area as a viable wetland. And then there's other areas where the state drainage comes into the site, and we're going to maintain that and allow that to run through, but intercept the debris that comes off the site, off the highway, as well as siltation. These plans have been reviewed by Milford DPW and their consultant Westcott and Mapes, and the plans have also been reviewed by the very new city engineer, and we've addressed their comments, and the plans that are in your package have addressed all the comments from both consultants. Project received initial approval from the Milford Inland Wetlands Agency on July 24th, 2014, and then we had gone back twice to modify the plan, once in November 19th, 2014, and their most recent modification was May 20th, 2015. In developing the site, we do have to fill a small portion of the floodplain. This plan, which is in your package, we entitled it preliminary CLOMAR, which is conditional letter of map revision. We show the areas in two different colors. The dark orange is the area of the floodplain that we need to fill, and it's basically in this area here, and a slight smaller area for the emergency access drive coming off Schoolhouse Road. The area in the very dark blue is an area that we're going to excavate to compensate for the area of floodplain that we're filling. And the area of compensation is equal or greater than the area that we're filling. It is not in the floodway. This is a part of the floodplain that is in the, say, overbank area, and it is determined by contour elevation. We received the model of Beaverbrook from FEMA, ran the numbers through, and once we receive approval from this board, we will submit these plans to FEMA for approval of basically swapping the two areas on the floodplain. With that, I will turn the presentation over to Matt Davison, our soil scientist.
We're just going to switch that up a moment. Hello, good evening. My name is Michael Grillo, President, Grillo Services and Grillo Organic, Milford, Connecticut. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Planning and Zoning Board members, as well as neighbors, friends, and employees. Grillo Organic and Grillo Services was formed in 1993. We created a compost, soil, and mulch manufacturing facility located at 1183 Oronoke Road in Milford, Connecticut. We have grown since our early days, back in the 1990s, from a company with 3 employees to a company that now employs 21 people. Grillo Services has become one of the largest mulch producers and custom soil producers in Connecticut. We are proud of our growth, and through the years, we have always been happy to call Milford, Connecticut our home base for operations. Grillo served the city of Milford through 2 massive hurricanes, Irene in 2011 and Sandy in 2012. Through those tough days after those storms, Grillo kept its operations going 7 days a week and extra hours to help the city clear the debris off the roadways that was coming in nonstop on city trucks from those storms. Since our inception, Grillo has recycled enough green organics to fill Giant Stadium, thus reducing the carbon footprint of our country and saving landfill space, as well as manufacturing great mulches and soils for agricultural and many urban project developments. However, tonight we gather to discuss the future of 553 West Ave. 553 West Ave is home to a 57-acre parcel of land that contains Beaverbrook walking trails and wetlands. Grillo is planning to use only 8 acres of the total 57-acre parcel. We are committed to restoring the Beaverbrook Trail and the wetland area that is located behind our proposed compost site. Grillo has signed a letter of guarantee with Milford Conservation Committee to invest $18,000 to $20,000 over the next 4 years to mow the Phragmites that are behind our compost site that we propose, and create a 4-year maintenance plan to contain the Phragmites and help the native plant species in the area to flourish. Grillo also has designed a massive landscape plan that incorporates thousands of trees and shrubs and plants around the perimeter of the proposed compost facility. The landscape plan that was developed will make the site aesthetically pleasing, as well as help buffer noise from I-95 for the Beaverbrook walking trails. The benefits of having Grillo on the site are more taxes for the city, as the property will be back on the tax rolls, a restored and well-maintained wetland area that is now in a very degenerative state, Also a facility for Milford residents to go to dispose of their grass clippings and yard trimmings, as well as soil when they're performing around-the-house projects such as digging walkways and patios. Grillo has been a good neighbor, always donating hundreds of cubic yards of soil and mulch materials each year to local school projects, the community gardens at Eisenhower Park, and many special projects, including gardens that grow food for inner-city residents, as well as many donations with the Boy Scouts on many of their Eagle Scout projects. I hope you would join me with the enthusiasm that I have for making 553 West Ave our corporate headquarters for now and in the future, so that Grillo Services will always be able to call Milford, Connecticut, our corporate home base. Thank you. And my brother LJ would like to explain a little bit of the composting process to you. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, board members. I'm LJ Grillo, Vice President, Grillo Services. I'd like to explain some of the operations here. If you're looking at and wondering some of these rows you see right there, those would be leaf rows on the plan. What we do is we take in leaves and we build about a 12 by 12, if you can imagine pyramidal, 12 feet high, 12 feet wide. And what we do is we measure the temperatures between 160 and 180 degrees once the leaves are in rows for optimum composting. And then what we do is we use our payloaders to pick up the leaves and flip them. It's usually about once every 3 to 4 weeks. To give you an idea of the reduction, by the time we're done from start to finish, you're looking at about 12 to 14 months. The last 2 months are basically sitting in a cure pile before we actually screen it and blend it with our soils. The reduction of the leaf compost rows you see there, let's just use a number to give you an idea. It's 1,000, let's just say it's 1,000 yards there on a plan. By the time we're done, that reduces just about to 75%, so 1,000 yard equates to actually 250 yards of finished product, to give you an idea of the reduction in the composting process from start to finish. I would say that the 90% of our composting is leaf compost. About 10% is yard waste compost. When I say that, it's basically brush, and there's a little bit of a very minor part of grass also. When we do flip and turn, we maybe sometimes get a small odor of like a farm smell, which dissipates quite rapidly. And if I can compare it to anything, I would say to you, well, if you ever put, and this is compare a leaf to a grass clipping, which we do not handle a lot of, our majority is of leaf composting. If you put your pile up I should say grass clippings in your backyard, and on 95-degree August day, you step on it and trip and you fell, and you said, wow, the fumes would come up and overwhelm you, right? It would really stink. Our leaves do not smell like that at all. That's not the case. That would be something with totally high nitrogen. We're dealing with a carbon product that does not have that type of smell whatsoever. So I just want to give you a comparison of a smell and odor. And that would be in the front part of the property, and that abuts the 95 right there. And then it goes up over 6 lanes of 95 down to West Avenue on the other side. So really there's a big buffer there, about 40 feet, I would say, slope going up, 40, 50 feet up to 95, and then 6 lanes of 95, then down the slope to West Avenue. So we're really kind of in a hole down there, which is really good barrier, noise barrier for us also. So I want to show you the front of the site, explain that to you. In the back of the site, we'll be processing. You'll see some storage areas there. That would be for wood processing and I would say wood grinding, mulch manufacturing, and screening and blending of soils. That's what you see in the back part of the property. So screeners and grinders would be set up in the back part of the property, where we do a lot of our processing and blending of soils. And I would say, as far as that goes, I'll be happy to answer any questions about the way that site's set up and back there. If any board members have any questions? Nothing? And if no questions at this moment about the way I talked about the layout, I will turn it over to the landscape architect, or I'm going to turn to Matt Davidson, wetland specialist, soil scientist. Thank you.
Good evening, Commission members. My name is Matt Davison. I'm a senior environmental scientist with Ty and Bond. I'm a professional soil scientist and a professional wetland scientist. I did the initial wetland investigations on the property, worked on the project through inland wetlands, along with Dr. Michael Clemens, who's a well-respected herpetologist. Dr. Clemens is in Florida and couldn't attend tonight. I was asked to discuss briefly the wetland mitigation that we're proposing for the project. We feel very strongly that it provides a meaningful benefit to the site. There are three basic wetland mitigation areas on the site. These are the beige areas, which are shown on the plans here. Two of the wetland mitigation areas are actually designed and intended to deal with off-site inputs of stormwater from I-95, which are currently entering the site and causing erosion and sedimentation of site wetlands and degrading site wetlands. That is in these areas here. There's one input here. Another input over on this corner of the site where there's a ramp in Schoolhouse Road. In this particular location, there's stormwater that's entering from I-95 ramp and flows overland and actually enters Beaver Brook. And both of these areas are, as I stated, degrading site wetlands. So one of the benefits we felt in this mitigation plan is we were going to address those areas. In the mitigation area over here, we're actually constructing a stormwater wetland to intercept the stormwater runoff and treat it before it exits back into site wetlands. And in this other area, we've proposed a robust planting plan that will enhance the wetlands capability of treating stormwater runoff from 95 before it's discharged into site wetlands. And then the third area is an area that's intended to compensate for filling in the floodplain, and it's an excavation that'll be planted similar to a wetland and function to attenuate flood flows should there be flood flows. As was mentioned earlier, and I was unaware of this component of the mitigation plan, it was added after inland wetlands approval, and I think it's very meaningful, is their agreement to treat Phragmites on this property. The main wetland system here is a large wetland system. It dominates the site right now. It's essentially a Phragmites monoculture. As a Phragmites monoculture, there's very limited wildlife habitat value. In treating the Phragmites, you will enhance that wildlife habitat value. Additionally, as many of you know, there was a fire on the site a while back, and that's sort of characteristics of Phragmites. It is a fire hazard, so you're also alleviating a fire hazard. I think that's a very meaningful commitment that the Grillos have made to treat that wetland. That's about what I have. If anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. My name is Aristolis. I'm a landscape architect. I own a firm, Arisland Studio. We're located in Bridgeport, Connecticut. One of the things I'd like to mention as Attorney Stone mentioned in the very beginning is that it's kind of a new industry. When I came out of school, which was 27, 28 years ago, we were writing specifications for plantings that incorporated peat moss into the soils to bring up organic matters. And as we now know, and people realize, peat moss is not a renewable resource, which is now why we use compost so much. Additionally, now finally people are paying attention to soils. Everyone is like, wants to plant trees and green our streets and minimize carbon footprint, but the soils we put into the ground is a key component, which is why now we're manufacturing soils much more often. Instead of stripping soils off of green fields, which would be farm fields, we'll take regular soil that won't have organics and go to a facility like Grillo's and then develop specifications for manufactured soils. And that's everything from 3 to 5% organic content up to higher organic contents, which we'll specify for rain gardens. And that's where we're trying to mitigate stormwater and again, keep more stormwater on the sites. So these are very important facilities to have so that we're not trucking one of the materials far away to process and then bringing them back again, because that's literally how we're building the facilities and then maintaining, for example, top dressing athletic fields where the schools now were not permitted to use any kind of pesticides on the fields, so they utilize an organic method for maintaining fields, and part of that is top dressing it with a quality compost. So that's kind of my little pitch why we really need these kind of facilities in the industry. The planting plan we developed really is primarily a restoration plan to come back and create a variety of plantings around the perimeter of the site, both buffering from the wetland area with a variety of native shrubs to deciduous trees, and then the main, what would be really called the retail area here off of West Avenue. That's where we're including large shade trees, which would be 3 to 3.5 inch caliper oaks, elms, as well as ornamental plantings along the front edge of the roadway. So it's taking a facility and we're really dressing up the front of it. So that's kind of bringing in interest right along the roadway with seasonal interest from spring flowering plants all the way to ornamental grasses, which would last through the winter. So the site plan really has two components, kind of restoring the site around the perimeter and then kind of that, a manicured look along that front edge. And that's kind of in a quick summary about the landscaping and how we developed the plan. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now or later on. Thank you.
Just one comment about the landscaping. You'll see in your record that comments from the Conservation Commission as part of their minutes, they were extremely complimentary about the landscape plan and the native species that were being used. So wanted just to be aware of that, but it is in your record. Obviously, traffic is always a big issue, and I'm going to sound a little like your last presenter. This particular use of this site, compared to what is permitted in the DO25 zone, is significantly less of a traffic burden. And I would point out that those uses, such as office buildings, hotels, are permitted as of right. So you don't really get a say about traffic where it's permitted as of right use only by site plan approval. It's presumed by law that the roads are adequate to support the traffic that those would generate. With that being said, I'd like to call on Craig Yanis, our professional traffic engineer.
Good evening, Craig Yanis, project engineer at Ty & Bond. I'm a licensed engineer in the state of Connecticut, and I'm certified nationally as a professional traffic operations engineer. Ty & Bond was contracted by the applicant to review the potential impact of the proposed development on the traffic operations of West Avenue. As Brian and Fred explained, the development is a landscape supply and composting facility of just under 8 acres at 553 West Avenue. The site will be accessed by a full access, entering and exiting vehicles at a driveway on West Avenue about 250 feet south of the I-95 overpass. The proposed driveway will be unsignalized with stop control on the driveway approach and free flow on West Avenue. Also, as Fred mentioned, the site will have an emergency access only driveway on Schoolhouse Road just south of the I-95 on-ramp. This will be only used by authorized personnel as needed for emergencies. To obtain existing traffic volume information on West Avenue, a traffic count was conducted over a 24-hour period. The count showed that the morning peak hour occurs from 8 to 9 in the morning. And I'd like to point out that there was an error in the traffic report on page 2. The traffic volume in that peak hour on West Avenue should be 70 vehicles eastbound and 90 vehicles westbound. The volumes shown on the page there, which were 315 and 640, were the volumes we had for Schoolhouse Road, where we're not proposing a driveway. So just a clarification on that. So we're talking about 70 eastbound, 90 westbound vehicles on West Avenue at the driveway location in the morning peak hour. The afternoon peak hour occurs from 5 to 6 p.m. Outside the normal business hours of 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. So therefore, only the morning peak hour was analyzed for traffic impacts. These existing traffic volumes, which were taken in 2014, were projected to the proposed development completion year of 2018 using a 0.5% per year growth rate to account for general traffic growth in the area. It's an industry standard type of system where we contact the state and they advise us on what kind of traffic growth they expect in the area, and that's why we're using 0.5% per year. These volumes are called the background volumes. Traffic generated by the site was estimated based upon existing trip generation rates collected during the peak season at the existing Grillo facility on Oronoke Road. These rates were approved by the City Planning and Zoning Board as part of the previous application to expand the existing facility on Oronoke Road. Based on these observed rates, the proposed facility will generate approximately 24 trips, 12 entering, 12 exiting during the morning peak hour. Traffic capacity analyses were conducted during the morning peak hour for the site driveway intersection with West Avenue for these background traffic volumes, plus the site-generated traffic, what we'd call the combined conditions. The results are quantified in terms of level of service, a letter grade A through F, based on the delay experienced per vehicle, with A being minimal delays and F being significant delays, and the other metric being queuing, which is the distance that which vehicles may store at the driveway. The capacity analyses show that the entering and exiting traffic at the driveways operates efficiently at level service A, with less than 10 seconds of delay per vehicle during the morning peak hour, and queues of less than 1 vehicle are expected. In addition to the traffic analysis, the proposed driveway location was reviewed for intersection sight distance. That's the distance you can see in either direction when you're trying to exit the driveway to see if you can see an oncoming vehicle and decide whether the gap's large enough to take a turn. These are based on national and Connecticut DOT regulations. The Milford regulations stipulate that the sight distance must meet these national and CT DOT regulations. The proposed driveway provides acceptable sight distances looking in both directions, with the trimming of vegetation along the site and the relocation of a existing sign set up to the west of the driveway. Both the trimming and the sign relocation are proposed as part of the development. They're on C7.0 of your plan sheet. In addition to the trimming and the relocation of the signs, we recommend that we install truck entering roadway signs to give notification to drivers on West Avenue coming in both directions that there may be truck traffic entering the roadway at that location. Based on the results of our analysis, the proposed development is a low traffic generator and is not expected to have a significant impact to the operations on West Avenue as shown by the level of service A. And I can either address any questions you have now or following any other proceedings.
Also point out that the Traffic Authority did review the proposed development, Police Department, and found it acceptable with respect to the sight lines on the site. Finally, I'd like to call upon Carl Cassio, who's a doctor of acoustics, his PhD in acoustics, to talk about noise generated at the site.
Good evening. My name is Carl Cascio. I'm a principal of acoustical technologies in Waterford, Connecticut. They're passing out a report that I prepared for Grillo Services 3 years ago. I was asked to take a look at acoustic noise for this new site with the intent of addressing any issues that the neighborhood around the site might encounter to the machinery that's running on the site. And I approached this task in a relatively simple manner, in the sense that I know where all of the houses, condos, businesses are around the site. So one part of the plan was simply to go and measure the existing background noise. And we did that in December. And basically took measurements in the morning, at lunchtime, and in the evening to get some idea of how the noise levels varied, since the site was right next to Interstate 95 and the traffic levels varied during the day. The other part of the plan was, since they have an existing facility with the same machinery they're going to use at this new site, I was able on a different day to go to that site and measure the acoustic noise from all of their machinery. And there are two principal noise sources: a tub grinder that works on the wood and a screener that works on the rocks. And I was able to measure the noise from both of those machines at several distances, from close to the machine to as far as 800 feet away from the machine. And the point being, those are the kinds of dimensions that you'll see in the new site. So I wanted to know how the noise decreased as a function of distance. The existing site is a relatively flat area, so I was able to move my measurement equipment from the machine away from the site without having any dirt piles or leaf piles in the way, to get an idea of what an unblocked propagation loss would be. And then I was also able to put my microphones behind piles of dirt and leaves and get an idea of how much attenuation the piles would provide. So I have a real good estimate of what happens in a flat site in terms of how the noise decreases away from the machines. And at the same time, the new site has Interstate 95 and a relatively big wall between the houses and the machines, so there'll be additional attenuation. And what I was able to determine in general is that there's probably not going to be any noise issues with operating the machines at the new site. If you take a look at the noise requirements in Connecticut, there are really 5 different areas of acoustics that need to be addressed. 4 of them are steady state noise issues. 1 of them is a transient impulse noise specification. And if you're familiar with the numbers, it's 100 dBA for peak sound pressure level. And if you get away from any of these machines by more than 300 or 400 feet, you do not exceed the state noise requirement for impulse noise. So there won't be any issue, because the closest places to the machines are more than 600 feet from the machines, either the houses along West Avenue, the school, the hotel, the condominiums on West Avenue. They're all at greater distances. So as far as the peak sound pressure level, we won't exceed any of the state requirements. The other 4 issues are continuous noise. If you look at the spectrum from very low frequency to very high frequency, it's broken into 3 pieces. Below 20 hertz, it's infrasonic noise, basically the stuff that you feel rather than hear. Between 20 hertz and 20 kilohertz is the acoustic noise that we hear, that dBA ratings and levels are set. Above 20 kilohertz is ultrasonic noise that, maybe young kids and dogs and other animals can hear, but we can't hear. In both cases, infrasonic and ultrasonic, the noise levels that we measured are well below the state requirement of 100 dB. So there's no issue for those 2 frequency ranges. In the middle, in the acoustic band, the 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, the two machines do make high levels of noise. And the levels, peak levels vary anywhere from 80 to 90 dB close to the machine. If you get out 600 feet from the tub grinder and 300 feet from the screener, the noise levels have dropped below not only the state requirements for airborne noise, but also below the background levels at the houses and condos along West Avenue. So we're looking at putting machines further than 600 feet from those areas where there are people living or working. So there won't be any real acoustic issues for the people who are living nearby the new facility. The last area is basically prominent discrete tones are limited to 5 dB below the continuous broadband noise. And there's only a couple of frequencies at the very low end of the frequency range in the 20 to 30 hertz range that are near the requirement and might be an issue for the path that runs behind the facility. But we can treat that with a pile of dirt between the machine and the path so that even in those areas we can meet the noise requirements that the state has. So we don't really see this as being a noise issue. And I'll take any questions now or later.
That essentially concludes our professional presentation. I do have some final comments related to the site, just some observations. Under section 3.6.4.43, the height allowed in this zone is 60 feet. The house, which is a house, the office building, which if you look at the building elevations, it's like a log cabin type house. It's very residential in character. The storage building is Quonset hut, 1 story. The house is just under 24 feet. The Quonset hut is just under 25.5 feet. The floor area ratio in the zone is 0.35. On this 57.36 acre site, that would allow a floor area of 20.076 acres or 874,510 square feet. What is proposed is 6,300 square feet or 1/4 of 1%, or a floor area ratio of 0.0025. I point this out because one of the questions is the harmony with the area. And what we have, of course, we have the highway abutting the property. We have of the developed area, we have a large 40-acre conservation easement area. But the closest areas other than that are residential in nature, and certainly what's proposed here is in harmony with that residential use. It is the minimal amount of traffic you will get from any use that goes in that site, and certainly we have, and in fact, I'm going to ask our traffic engineer to present some statistics. I asked him to prepare concerning what they have determined could be developed on the site by office use or medical office uses of right, and the amount of traffic which would be generated, and more than is generated in a day would be generated peak hours. And of course, we have no traffic during the afternoon peak because the operation closes down at 4:30, also in harmony with the location. Vehicular traffic, I think that's been addressed. It's limited. It's It's traffic, and which is the best you can get on the roadway during peak hour for this site. The location and height of buildings, location, nature, and height of walls, fences, and the nature and extent of landscaping on the site shall be such that the use will not hinder or discourage the appropriate development and use of adjacent land and buildings or impair the value thereof. I think that's self-evident, frankly. Not that there's going to be much development close by to this site because most of it's highway and open space, but certainly it is in harmony with and does not impair the developed and existing uses within the area. With that, I conclude our presentation. If there are any questions, obviously, we'd be delighted to answer them.
Thank you. Any comments from staff?
Yes, I've got questions. Mr. Stone, can you or someone on your team clarify the other permits that will be needed by either either the feds or the state after a local approval? Specifically, the Clomar. Does the Army Corps have to, chime in?
Fred, well, I'll ask our project engineer to address that.
The question was other permits. For the wetlands work that we're doing, the pond area here, because it is a wetland, that will need a Corps approval. The Clomar is a FEMA permit. The Clomar is a conditional. The final LOMAR, which is the letter map of revision, would be applied for after all the work has been regraded, do an as-built of the grading area, then we file for the final. Once the site is prepped, then we have to file with Connecticut Deep to operate it as a leaf composting, mulching, actually leaf composting and volume reduction plant. The volume reduction is take stumps, logs, and brush and grind them up to make materials. So that would be a deep permit, which would be the final permit that we would need to operate the facility.
Great, thank you. I have a traffic study question now. The peak traffic flow was done in September of 2014. And in the testimony this evening, you talked about you had two peak seasons, March through June, September through November, so basically 7 months out of the year is your peak season. Any particular reason why you looked at just the September window and not the March or through June window?
Well, generally what we do is we try to count when school is in session. So that being, especially with the school down the street, being the peak time period for West Avenue, apart from the Grillo facility. So we're trying to get a baseline just for West Avenue, regardless of Grillo. And then for the Grillo facility, we took counts. The original rates that we used from the Oronoque Road facility were in June. So that's pretty much their peak. I believe Mike and LJ might tell you that might be their peak month, or May or June. And so we kind of took both peaks and put them together. And so instead of taking it all as one, so if that makes sense.
Thank you. And the last question, the sound engineer talked about how the sound trails off based on obviously the distance from the machinery. If I'm not mistaken, well, one thing. It's a two-part question. The machinery that will be located on this site, is it at all mobile, or is it stationary without wheels? And if so, in either case, I don't believe in the plans we have an actual fixed location on that equipment. So when statements are made that the sound is going to travel off before it gets to the neighboring properties, how do we know that that will be consistent, especially if the equipment happens to be mobile and is moved around?
It is mobile, and it's placed near where the material processing is going on, so you can see that on the plans. And what I did was recommend that the two machines be placed as far from the boundaries as possible. And with respect to the houses along West Street, it's more than 600 feet away from the houses. And you know, my recommendation basically puts it up at the northern end of the material processing area, sort of centrally located in the site that they can use. So it is as far away from the boundaries as possible. I mean, that can vary, but they do have the advantage of being able to place a barrier between the machine and some potential neighbor that, you know, might have a noise issue. So there is some flexibility. It doesn't have to be in any one particular space if they use the materials on site to block the sound.
So when you say barrier, you're saying they would have the ability to use the material that they create on site and basically build a mound or something to...
If you look in the report towards the end, you'll see the performance you get by placing barriers of either dirt or leaves in the way of the machines, and it's significant.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions from the board? Ms. Servine.
I don't know if I didn't hear this or if you didn't say this, but are you keeping the Orinoco property site?
Yes, this is not intended to replace Orinoco Road. It is intended to give us a permanent headquarters. But we will, Orinoco Road is a 18-acre site, and this is an 8-acre site. So we don't own Orinoco Road. We lease it, and the landlord there has plans for the southern 5-6 acres of that site. So the reason we're trying to plan ahead and have our own corporate headquarters is because he's going to be reducing the scale of that site that we can use. So this will give us our own site where we can sell product out of, and it's not intended in any way to replace Orinoco Road. Orinoco Road will still be open in the future. If not that, a farm somewhere else, but we definitely cannot function wholly on this smaller parcel of land. So either way, we work it out in the future with our landlord for a longer term lease. We'll be happy to stay on a certain section of Orinoco Road. But if not, then we hope to have this site and then another farmer, something down the road to process on. But the question is, for right now, Orinoco Road will be open for us until 2021. That's when our lease is up at Orinoco Road.
So would there be vehicles going back and forth between the two sites?
Yep, there will be some vehicles going down Bick Drive to West Ave, and but most of the bulk material will go straight to the Orinoco Road site. So we're not crisscrossing. We're not having vehicles take material to Orinoco Road, process it, and bring it back. We will try to divert as much bulk material directly to Orinoco Road, process it there, and then bring it to our site for resale. So that will help alleviate a lot of the traffic issues that people have concerns with. And if in the future, if we weren't operating on Orinoco Road, the trucks would hit 95 and probably go up north to a farm. That would be a larger scale production facility. But we need this site to actually have a sale that we could sell retail out of and do a little bit of production. But like I said, it's not intended to replace a huge site. It's impossible to do that. But that's we want to own a site and have our own site in Milford so we could control our own future destiny. We're not at the whims of a landlord. Thank you.
Mr. Grillo? Mr. Grillo?
Yes, David.
While you're there, just a quick question. Did I hear properly? Did you say you're utilizing 18 acres at your current site?
The current site is roughly 18 acres, yes. Yes.
Thank you.
That's correct, thank you.
Mr. Salkis, I have a question. This is a technical question. Article 7 requires, part of this application is a proposal of constructing 2 buildings. Article 7 clearly states that basically drawings are supposed to be submitted for those, floor plans and elevations. We haven't received those. Also, the drawings that we received reference drawing C 4.0 and C 4.1 and L1, and we didn't receive those either. So my question would be would this be considered an incomplete application or not?
What I can tell you is when I reviewed the plans initially, they were there. So I'm going to go through the set now. I'm just wondering if there's something that wasn't printed when they were distributed to you. Technically, if they have to provide you with information that's not provided, it would be incomplete.
On sheet A1, in the back A1 period 0, we have the front and elevation, first floor plan, and we have this second floor plan, and the side elevation, and the basement.
Do you have sheet A1?
And on the last...
No, I have no architectural plans at all. I can tell you what we got. We received C 4.2, 4.2A, C6, L2, L2.1. That's it.
Yeah, no, you should have a complete set of documents here. We submitted full copies, documents, 10 sets for each member.
The 5 sheets that Commissioner Grant just talked about were in response to the city engineer's review comments. If you had received the full package, which is like 29 drawings, the architectural plans were at the tail end of that package, which David has in his set.
And if I have them, you guys should have them because it would come out of the same batch.
If you recall, you received a full set of plans at your last meeting. They were hand-delivered to you at the meeting because they were rather large sets of plans and saved the town a little money. The reason that there were subsequent plans were because between there was originally Westcott and Mapes was consulting engineering for the city when you didn't have a town engineer. We responded to their comments. Their comments were set forth in the original set of plans. And then when the new city engineer came on board, he reviewed them again and he had his own comments in addition to Westcott and Mapes. And those 5 plans that were delivered with your package for tonight were to address those comments from the city engineer. And he reviewed those and submitted a letter saying that he was satisfied with with how those were addressed.
Mr. Sulkus, is it safe to assume that we're not going to get to the public comment tonight? And if that's true, if that's true, this may be a good stopping point so we don't keep them waiting.
That's up to you.
This is not right. This is not right.
This is one of those very unfortunate things that do happen on occasion when we have very, very long meetings. As a matter of fact, we have to have a motion tonight to extend our meeting even by 15 minutes. But everybody can come back. I know it's a very great inconvenience, but you can all come back, and you must come back if you need to say something to the next meeting we have, which will be on January 5th. No, if you make a statement, everybody can make a statement, so I would say no to that.
So we're going to conclude this agenda item. We'll give everyone 5 minutes to file out, and again, it will be on the January 5th agenda. All right, so we're back on the record. I think we need a motion to extend the 11 o'clock deadline by 20 minutes. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, so we'll continue. The next item on the agenda is proposed zoning regulation tech changes. We are going to only do 4.1, 3.1, and 5.8. The ones preceding that are going to be on the next agenda. Mr. Grant. Mr. Grant, you could pick up from here.
All right. Proposed regulation changes. The first one is 4.1.1.4 regarding structures or accessory buildings in residential districts, where basically it states that an accessory building or structure has to be 8 feet from a dwelling unit. We are proposing to delete that regulation entirely with no substitution. Section 3.1.4.1, Figure 2, is in conjunction with that particular deletion. It is a chart within the within our zoning regulations that states the distance from a dwelling unit equals 8 feet. So in eliminating the definition, the 4.1.1.4, we would also need to delete the wording off of the chart. And the last item is section 5.8.5, which applies to building applications. Our zoning regulations state that anybody coming before the board with a new building application, the drawings would have to be signed and sealed by a professional engineer or architect. The state statutes do allow for other people to present or to do drawings that don't have to be signed and sealed. So therefore, we're going to add that to this regulation, that any individual in compliance with the state chapter 390 section 2298 can also present the drawings. Those are the 3 applications, 3 changes.
Any comments from staff?
Not this evening.
Any questions from the board? Seeing none, we will open this up for public comment.
I know my supporters. Jim Deno Design, 93 Sunnyside Court, and I do support these amendments, for the record. And I waited 4 hours to say that.
Well, brevity is loved around here, so thank you. Any comments on that comment? Seeing no Mr. Grant, I assume, being the chairman of the subcommittee, you recommend that we adopt these?
Yes, these were all passed before the board, and were voted on to send it to the agencies. All the agencies came back with no problems, so that's why they went to public hearing.
And, so we just need a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 3 text changes.
Mr. Pinzella
Second.
seconds. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Anyone against? The motion passes, and do we need to select a date?
Yes. I believe January 8th is the date of the evening.
Excellent. Thank you.
The next meeting will deal with the other amendments?
Yes.
Yes.
No, the 19th.
The
January 19th will
January
be.
19th. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is liaison reports. Mr. Mead, any reports?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. At the Police Commission meeting last night, they reviewed an 8-30G that they approved the month before on Seaside Avenue, but now they're asking that they're amending their motion to approve it so that when it comes to us that we ask for a separate traffic study on that because of the traffic on Seaside Avenue.
Mr. Grant, Regulation Subcommittee.
First, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Ben and Jean for their diligence in coming to all the meetings at the subcommittee. I'm going to miss them. They're a great help with going through all the regulations. We are down to 2 people from the board, Mr. Kirsch and myself, as far as continuing on the subcommittee. So I will ask for everybody to kind of think about it for the next couple of weeks or so. If somebody else would like to volunteer, we definitely would like to have you on the subcommittee.
Would you like me to make some lame duck appointments?
Yeah. So if you would think about it, basically what we meet is an hour before a regular meeting on the first Tuesday of the month. So basically that's about the amount of time that you got to put in, plus another maybe couple of hours to do some research and stuff throughout the week. But would appreciate anybody to volunteer.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Any discussion, or would anyone like to make a motion? Mr. Quish, motion. Having a motion and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? The motion passes. The next item on the agenda is Chair's report. I think I will make my first report and my last report. I just want to thank David and Phyllis for all the work that they do to help this board run. Without them, we obviously wouldn't have a functioning board. So I appreciate all of their help and support the last 4 years, but 2 years as chair. I also want to thank the entire board. I think we, and I say this with a little bit of bias, but I think we have the best board in terms of not being political. Everybody gets along. It was a very enjoyable 4 years, and I think everybody here has the interest of the city as their overriding decision making. We might not always agree, but everybody here really has the best interest of the city. And I am retiring after 4 years, but Ms. Servine is retiring after 12 years. So I think this is really her goodbye celebration. So Ms. Servine, thank you for your 12 years of service. You've certainly left a positive impact on the board. And for those that don't know, the Green Book was written by Ms. Servine, as well as the procedures for the planning and zoning public hearing, which I had to follow. So thank you, Ms. Servine, for all you did. And that is my report. Would you like to say anything?
I would. I would just like to say that it's really been a pleasure working with this board. I love working with all men. I realize that's quite fun for me. But you know, over the years, I want to reiterate what Ben said too. I was talking with Attorney Nuff, or he came up and was talking to me about the board, and he said nobody in this city realizes how important this board is. He said that he thought it was the most important board in the city. And I think it certainly is up there on one of the top 2 anyway, and all the work we put into it. And again, what Ben said, you know, we work for the city. You know, it's great not to have partisan divides. I love that. So anyway, thanks one and all. Carry on. I can't quite leave it because I keep telling Ed what he's got to ask, you know, at the next meeting. But anyway, thank you.
She'll be running in 2017. But Mr. Sulkis, any staff report?
This evening, I just want to thank both of you and Ms. Servine for your years of service and dedication and diligence to making this again, probably the best board in the city.
And with that, the meeting is adjourned.